When I called my son about my grandson's graduation party, he went silent. The line crackled with a hesitation that made the hair on the back of my neck stand up. Then I heard his wife Paige snatch the phone. She laughed a cold, dry sound like brittle leaves stepping on concrete. "The party was last Saturday, Winston," she said. "We did not invite you because we did not want you to show up in those greasy overalls and embarrass Malik in front of our friends." I hung up the phone without a word. I looked at the $50,000 check I had written for Malik's tuition. I looked at the vintage 1969 Mustang I had spent 5 years restoring for him. I didn't cry. I lit a cigar. Then I called my lawyer and said 4 words: execute the nuclear option. A week later, they came crawling up my driveway begging for help. I looked down at them from my porch and said, "Get off my property. I am Winston Collier, 71 years old. People around Atlanta call me Big Win. I have spent my entire life with grease under my fingernails and the smell of gasoline in my clothes. To some people that smells like poverty. To me it smells like freedom. Before I tell you how I taught my ungrateful son and his snobby wife a lesson they will never forget, please hit that like button and subscribe. And tell me in the comments, have you ever been excluded by your own family because you weren't fancy enough for them?" It was a Tuesday afternoon, and the Georgia sun was beating down on the tin roof of my workshop. Inside it was cool and smelled of wax and leather. I was holding a microfiber cloth, moving it in slow circular motions over the hood of a 1969 Ford Mustang Mach 1. This car was my masterpiece. It was candy apple red, a color so deep you could almost drown in it. I had found the chassis in a scrapyard 5 years ago. It was nothing but rust and bad memories then, but I saw the potential. Just like I saw the potential in my grandson Malik. For 5 years, every spare hour I had, every spare dollar I earned went into this car. I rebuilt the engine block by hand. I sourced the original leather for the seats. I polished every inch of chrome until it shone like a mirror. This wasn't just a car. It was a gift. Malik was graduating from high school this weekend. He was the first Collier to get into Stanford. My chest swelled with pride every time I thought about it. My son Andre never understood the value of working with his hands. He wanted to sit in air-conditioned offices and wear Italian suits. That was fine. I wanted better for him. But Malik was different. Malik would come to the shop after school and watch me work. He had respect for the machine. He had respect for the process. I wiped a speck of dust off the fender. Perfect. I imagined the look on Malik's face when I pulled up to the graduation party and tossed him the keys. It was going to be the best moment of my life. I walked over to my workbench. Sitting there next to a pile of invoices was a crisp blue envelope. Inside was a check for $50,000. It was the first installment for Malik's tuition. I had saved it quietly, putting away profits from my restoration business. My son Andre and his wife Paige thought I was just scraping by. They thought I lived on Social Security and whatever loose change I made fixing carburetors. They didn't know that collectors from all over the country paid top dollar for my work. They didn't know I owned the 5 acres of land my shop sat on free and clear, land that developers had been eyeing for years. Money doesn't need to shout to be heard, it just needs to be there when it counts. I checked my watch. It was time to call Andre. I needed to know the details for the party on Saturday. I wanted to make sure I arrived early to park the Mustang right up front. I picked up my old flip phone. I dialed Andre's number. He picked up on the 3rd ring. "Hello." "Hey, son, it is your pop," I said, my voice raspy from years of cigar smoke. "Oh. Hey, Dad." Andre sounded distracted, nervous. I could hear the clinking of glasses in the background. "I am just calling to double-check the time for Malik's party this Saturday," I said, leaning back against the workbench. "I got a little surprise for the boy. I want to make sure I am there before the speeches start." There was a long silence on the other end. Too long. "Andre. You there, son?" "Yeah, Dad. I am here," Andre said. His voice was tight. "Listen, about the party." "What about it? Is it canceled?" "No, it is not canceled. It is just—" Suddenly the phone fumbled. I heard a scuffle. Then a woman's voice cut through the line, sharp and piercing. "Winston, are you seriously calling right now?" It was Paige, my daughter-in-law. She was a woman who looked at everything in the world and calculated its price tag before she decided if it was worth her time. She had never liked me. To her, I was just the embarrassing old black man who lived in a shed and drove a truck. She tolerated me because I was Andre's father, but she made sure to wipe off the chairs after I sat in them. "Hello, Paige," I said, keeping my voice steady. "I am just asking Andre about the time for Saturday. I don't want to be late for my grandson." Paige let out a laugh. It wasn't a happy laugh. It was the kind of laugh you hear in a boardroom right before someone gets fired. Saturday. Winston, the party was last Saturday. My hand froze on the workbench. The cloth I was holding dropped to the floor. Last Saturday, I repeated. "But Andre told me it was the 25th. "We changed it," Paige said breezily. "And honestly, Winston, we didn't think you would notice. You had a graduation party for my grandson and you didn't invite me," I asked. The words tasted like ash in my mouth. "Look, Winston, let us be adults about this," Paige said. Her tone switched from dismissive to condescending, like she was explaining quantum physics to a toddler. "We had a lot of important people there. Andre's boss was there. My partners from the real estate firm were there. These are high-class people, Winston. We couldn't risk it." "Risk what I asked." My voice dropped an octave. "Risk you showing up in that truck," Paige snapped. "Risk you walking in with grease under your fingernails smelling like old oil and cheap cigars. You would have stuck out like a sore thumb. You would have embarrassed Malik." "Embarrassed him," I whispered. "I raised that boy while you were busy climbing the corporate ladder, Paige. I taught him how to walk. And we appreciate that." "Winston, really, we do," Paige said, cutting me off. "But this is his future we are talking about. He is going to Stanford. He needs to network with the right crowd. He doesn't need his grandfather telling stories about fixing transmissions in the 70s. It is a bad look. Bad." I felt a coldness spread through my chest. It started in my heart and radiated out to my fingertips. It wasn't sadness. Sadness is warm. This was ice. "So Malik graduated," I said. "And you didn't tell him I was coming?" "Oh, we told him," Paige said. "We told him you were sick. We said you had a flare-up of your arthritis and couldn't make the drive. He was sad for a minute, but he got over it. He had a great time. They lied to him. They looked my grandson in the eye on one of the most important days of his life and told him I didn't care enough to be there. They turned my love into a lie to protect their fragile little social status." "Put Andre back on the phone," I said. "He is busy," Winston, Paige said. "We are celebrating. We just bought a new boat. We are celebrating Andre's promotion." "Goodbye, Winston. Don't call us. We will call you when we have time." The line went dead. I stood there in the silence of my workshop. The only sound was the hum of the refrigerator in the corner and the ticking of the cooling engine of the Mustang. I looked at the car. The candy apple red paint gleamed under the fluorescent lights. It looked eager. It looked ready to run. It was supposed to be Malik's freedom. I looked at the reflection of myself in the window. I saw an old man in blue coveralls. Yes, there was grease on my collar. Yes, my hands were rough and scarred. These hands had built a life. These hands had paid for Andre's first car. These hands had held Malik when he had a fever. And now, these hands were not good enough. I slowly walked over to the workbench. I picked up the blue envelope. I pulled out the check. $50,000. Payable to Stanford University. This was just the first year. I had planned to pay for all 4 years. I wanted Malik to graduate debt-free. I wanted him to start his life with a clean slate. I reached into my pocket and pulled out my Zippo lighter. I flicked the lid open. The flame danced yellow and blue. I held the corner of the check over the flame. I watched the heat curl the edge of the paper. It would be so easy. Just let it burn. Let the money turn to ash, just like my relationship with my son. They wanted to cut me out. Fine. I would cut them off. I brought the flame closer. The paper started to brown. But then I stopped. Burning the check was emotional. It was a reaction. And Winston Collier did not react. He planned. If I burned this check, nobody would know. Andre and Paige didn't know I had this money. They thought I was poor. If I just destroyed it, they would continue living their lie thinking they had won. They would continue to poison Malik's mind against me. No, that was too easy. I snapped the lighter shut. The flame vanished. I looked at the Mustang. $85,000 worth of American muscle. I looked at the check. $50,000. That was $135,000 of ammunition. Paige said I was an embarrassment. She said I was a sore thumb. She wanted to play the game of status. She wanted to talk about net worth and high-class people. All right, Paige, let's play. I folded the check and put it back in my pocket. I grabbed a rag and wiped a smudge of oil off my hand. I walked over to the wall and pulled the master switch for the shop lights. Darkness swallowed the room, leaving only the silhouette of the car. I walked out into the bright afternoon sun. My Rottweiler Judge lifted his head from his spot on the porch. He let out a low woof. "Come on, boy," I said, patting his massive head. "We have work to do." I walked into my small house. It wasn't fancy, but it was paid for. I went to the closet and pulled out the one suit I owned. It was old-fashioned, wide lapels, but the fabric was good. I wasn't going to wear it. Not today. I picked up the phone again, but this time I didn't dial Andre. I dialed a number I hadn't called in years. A man named Mr. Henderson. He owned the biggest classic car dealership in Atlanta. He had been trying to buy my Mustang for a decade. "Hello," Henderson answered. "Bring your checkbook," I said. "I am selling the car." Henderson paused. "You are joking, right? When? You said you would be buried in that car." "Plans change," I said, my voice cold and hard. "I want $85,000, cashier's check, today. Consider it sold," Henderson said quickly, afraid I would change my mind. I hung up. Then I called my lawyer. "Mr. Collier." He sounded surprised. "Everything okay?" "No," I said. "I want you to pull the file on the land trust. The 5 acres. You want to update your will." "No," I said. "I want to prepare an eviction notice, and I want you to find out exactly how much debt my son is in. I want to know every credit card, every car note, every mortgage payment." There was a silence on the line. "Winston." "This sounds serious," the lawyer said. "It is serious," I said, lighting my cigar. "My son thinks I am trash. I am about to show him that one man's trash is another man's bankruptcy." I blew a cloud of smoke into the air. They wanted a show, I was going to give them a show. And it wasn't going to be pretty. The engine of the 1969 Mustang Mach-1 roared to life one last time inside my shop. It was a deep, guttural growl that vibrated through the concrete floor and settled right into my chest. This car was not just metal and rubber. It was 5 years of my life. It was late nights with aching knuckles. It was early mornings with cold coffee. It was the physical manifestation of the love I had for my grandson Malik. I had built it to be his wings. I had built it so he could fly away from the toxicity of his parents and find his own path. But wings are useless if the bird is in a cage. And my son Andre and his wife Paige had locked Malik in a cage of lies and pretension. I backed the car out into the Georgia sunlight. The candy apple red paint looked like liquid fire. I ran my hand along the door panel one last time, feeling the smooth, cool curve of the steel. I remembered teaching Malik how to sand this door. He was 14 then. He complained that his arms hurt. I told him that pain was just weakness leaving the body. He laughed and kept sanding. We bonded over this car, and now I was about to drive it to its execution. I did not drive fast. I drove slow. I wanted to feel every gear shift. I wanted to hear the exhaust sing its song. I drove past the high school where Malik had graduated without me. I drove past the fancy country club where Paige probably told her friends that her father-in-law was a senile charity case. I pulled into the lot of Henderson Classic Cars. It was a high-end place with glass walls and marble floors, the kind of place where they served espresso to customers and didn't look at the price tag. Mr. Henderson was waiting for me outside. He was a short man with a white mustache and a respect for machinery that most people reserved for religion. He watched the Mustang roll up and I saw the hunger in his eyes. He knew what this car was. He knew there wasn't another one like it in the state. "Winston," he said, wiping his hands on a rag even though they were clean. "You are actually doing it. I never thought I would see the day." I stepped out of the car. I was wearing my blue coveralls. My name, Win, was stitched in red thread over my heart. I didn't care if I looked out of place among the Porsches and Ferraris. I owned the best thing on the lot. "Cut the check, Henderson," I said. My voice was flat. 85,000. No negotiation. Henderson didn't blink. He walked into his office and came back 2 minutes later with a cashier's check. It was warm from the printer. I handed him the keys. They felt heavy in my palm, like I was handing over a piece of my soul. "Take care of her," I said. "She likes high octane. Don't put that cheap stuff in her tank." Henderson nodded, solemn as a funeral director. "You have my word, Win." I walked away without looking back. I couldn't look back. If I looked back, I might change my mind. I might run back and grab the keys and drive to Malik and tell him everything. But Malik was a boy. He couldn't fight this war. I had to fight it for him. I called a taxi to take me back to my shop. I sat in the back seat clutching the check for $85,000 in one hand and the tuition check for $50,000 in the other, $135,000. It was enough to start a war. I got back to the shop around noon. The silence was deafening. The spot where the Mustang used to sit was empty. It looked like a missing tooth in a smile. I sat down at my desk and lit a cigar. The smoke curled up to the tin roof. Then the phone rang. I knew who it was before I looked at the caller ID. It was Andre. I let it ring 3 times. 4 times. I took a long drag of the cigar. "Hello," I answered. Dad Andre's voice was frantic, high-pitched. It lacked the bass of a grown man. "Where have you been? I have been calling the house phone for an hour." "I was out," I said calmly. Out, where?" "Look, it doesn't matter. Dad, I need you to transfer the money. Today. Right now." He didn't say hello. He didn't ask how I was. He didn't mention the graduation party. He didn't apologize for lying to his son. He just went straight for the wallet. "Transfer what money, Andre?" I asked, playing dumb. "The tuition," Andre screamed. "The $50,000 for Stanford. You promised Dad. You said you would cover the first year. The deadline is tomorrow. If we don't wire it by 5 p.m., Malik loses his spot in the dorms. And there is a late fee." I leaned back in my chair, putting my feet up on the desk. "Is that so?" I said. "Well, that sounds stressful." "Dad, why are you acting like this?" Andre demanded. "Did you go to the bank? Did you deposit the check? Just wire it to my account. I will handle the payment to the school, to his account." Of course, he didn't want me to pay the school directly. He wanted the money to pass through his hands first. A little skim off the top, perhaps. Or maybe he needed to show a large deposit to qualify for another loan he couldn't afford. "I can't do that, son," I said. "What do you mean you can't? You said you had the money. You said the restoration business had a good year. Don't tell me you lied to me, Winston." "I didn't lie," I said, tapping the ash off my cigar. "I have the money. In fact, I have it right here in my pocket." "Then send it." Andre yelled. "God, you are so difficult. Paige is freaking out. She is crying, 'Dad, do you want to upset Paige?'" I thought about Paige. I thought about her laughing on the phone, telling me I was an embarrassment. "Actually," I said, taking a slow breath. I spent it. There was a silence on the other end, so profound I could hear Andre's breathing hitch. You, what?" he whispered. I spent it. I repeated. All of it. Plus a little extra. On what? Andre shrieked. "What could you possibly spend $50,000 on in one morning? You live in a shed. You drive a truck from 1995. "Well," I said, letting a small smile creep onto my face. I was thinking about what Paige said yesterday. What did she say?" "She said I was an embarrassment," I said, my voice hardening like steel. "She said I couldn't come to the party because I looked like a mechanic. She said I needed to fit in with your high-class friends." Andre was silent. He knew. He knew I had heard. So I continued. "I took that $50,000 and I went to the finest tailor in Atlanta and I bought a suit. A really nice suit, Andre. Silk lining, Italian wool, gold cufflinks, and then I bought a watch. A Rolex. You spent my son's tuition on a suit." Andre gasped. "Are you insane?" "No," I said. "I am just trying to fit in, son. Next time you have a party, I will be the best-dressed man there. I won't embarrass you anymore." "Isn't that what you wanted, Dad? Please tell me you are joking." Andre pleaded. His voice cracked. "We don't have the money, Dad. We don't have it." "I know you don't," I said. And that was the truth. I knew everything. While I was driving to the dealership, my lawyer had sent me the report. It was a financial autopsy of my son's life, and the patient was dead on arrival. Andre and Paige lived in a $2 million house in Buckhead, but they didn't own a brick of it. They were renting to own, and they were 3 months behind on payments. They drove a Range Rover and a BMW, both leased, both maxed out on mileage. But the real kicker was the credit card debt. $200,000. They had been living a lie for a decade. They went on vacations they couldn't afford to post pictures on Instagram. They threw parties with catered lobster to impress people who didn't like them. They bought designer clothes for Malik to make him look like a prince while they were rotting like paupers. They needed my $50,000 not just for tuition. They needed it to stop the dam from breaking. If Malik didn't go to Stanford, the rumor mill would start. People would ask why. The facade would crack. They needed my money to maintain the illusion that they were successful. Dad Andre was crying now, real tears of panic. You don't understand. If we don't pay this, everything falls apart. Paige will leave me. The bank is calling every day. Please, you have assets. Sell the land, sell the shop. You can get a loan? Just fix this for me. Fix it, I asked. I spent 40 years fixing things, Andre. I fixed your bicycle. I fixed your first car. I fixed your grades when you failed math. But I can't fix a man who breaks himself to please a woman who hates his father. Dad, please. You said I was an embarrassment. I said, well, son, get ready, because poverty is a lot more embarrassing than Greece. I hung up the phone. I didn't feel good. I felt sick. No father wants to hear his son beg. No father wants to know he raised a coward. But sometimes you have to break a bone to reset it properly. I sat there for another hour. I watched the sun move across the floor. Then I heard the sound of tires screeching on gravel. I looked out the window. It was the Range Rover, black, shiny, and leased. It skidded to a halt in front of the main gate. Andre jumped out. He was wearing a polo shirt and khakis, looking like he just came from the golf course, but his face was red and sweaty. Paige got out from the passenger side. She was wearing sunglasses and holding a designer bag that probably cost more than my truck. They ran toward the gate, but the gate was closed. I had padlocked it with a heavy chain before I came inside. I watched them rattle the chain. Dad, Andre screamed, shaking the metal bars. Dad, open up. We know you are in there, Winston Page yelled. Stop this childish game. Open this gate right now. I stood up. I walked to the window, but I stayed in the shadows. I wanted to see them. They looked desperate. They looked like rats on a sinking ship. Andre tried to climb the fence, but his expensive loafers slipped on the metal mesh. He fell back, dusting off his pants, cursing. Then Paige saw it. I had put up a sign on the gate earlier that morning, a large white sign with red letters. She stopped shaking the gate. She took off her sunglasses. She stared at the sign. Her mouth opened a little. Andre walked over to her. What is it? He looked at the sign. I saw his shoulders slump. I saw the color drain from his face even from 50 yards away. The sign didn't say closed. It said property under audit, seized assets division, no trespassing. It was a lie, of course. I had printed it myself, but they didn't know that. In their world of debt and foreclosure, a sign like that meant the IRS, it meant the government. It meant that the one lifeline they thought they had, the one asset they planned to sell when I died, was gone. Oh my God, Paige screamed. Her voice carried across the yard. He lost it. The old fool lost the land. No, Andre moaned, holding his head. No. I watched them. They didn't care about me. They didn't care if I was in trouble with the IRS. They didn't care if I was going to jail. They only cared that their inheritance just evaporated. I picked up my cigar. I walked out onto the porch. Judge, my Rottweiler, stood up beside me. He let out a low growl, sensing the intruders. Hey! I shouted. They both looked up. They saw me standing there in my greasy coveralls holding a cigar, looking like the king of my own castle. Can't you read? I yelled, pointing at the sign. Dad Andre shouted, running back to the gate. What happened? What does that sign mean? It means I am broke, son. I lied, my voice booming. Bad investments. The government is taking it all. Looks like we are in the same boat now, Winston Page screeched. You stupid old man. How could you lose this land? It is worth millions. I shrugged. I guess I am just not good with money, Paige. I guess I am just a dumb mechanic. I took a puff of the cigar. Now get off my property, I said, calm and cold. Before the auditors come back and impound your leased car, too. I saw them look at each other. The panic was real now. The safety net was gone. They got back in the car. They didn't wave goodbye. They peeled out of the driveway, spraying gravel everywhere, driving back to their mansion of lies. I watched the dust settle. Round one was over. But I wasn't done. I picked up the phone again. Hello. It was my lawyer. Is the eviction notice ready? I asked. Yes, Win. But are you sure that is your son? I looked at the empty spot where the Mustang used to be. He is not my son today, I said. Today he is just a man who owes me a graduation party. Send the notice. I hung up. I looked at Judge. You hungry, boy? I asked. He wagged his tail. Good, because the rats are going to come back, and next time I am going to let you off the leash. The sound of metal snapping is a sound I know well. I have spent 50 years working with steel and iron. I know the sound of a bolt shearing off. I know the sound of a chassis cracking. And I know the sound of a padlock being forced open by a tire iron. I sat in my leather armchair in the living room, the lights dimmed, the curtains drawn. My Rottweiler Judge was lying at my feet, his ears pricked up before I even heard the noise. He let out a low rumble from deep within his chest, a sound like a distant thunderstorm. Easy, boy, I whispered, reaching down to stroke his thick black fur. Wait for it. I watched through the slit in the curtains. My son Andre was standing at the front gate holding the tire iron from his leased Range Rover. He looked sweaty and frantic. He twisted the tool, and with a sharp crack, the heavy chain I had placed there fell to the ground. He pushed the gates open. He did not hesitate. He did not stop to think that he was committing a crime. He drove the Range Rover up my driveway, tires spinning in the gravel, kicking up dust. He parked right on the patch of grass where my wife Rose used to grow her hydrangeas. They slammed the car doors. Andre and Paige marched toward my front door. They looked like an invading army. They thought they were coming to conquer a senile old man. They did not know they were walking into a lion's den. They did not knock. The front door flew open, banging against the wall. Dad, Andre screamed. Dad, where are you? I did not move. I took a slow drag of my cigar and let the smoke drift into the stagnant air of the room. I am right here, son, I said, my voice calm, deep. Andre jumped. He spun around, squinting into the gloom. When he saw me sitting there, he let out a breath of relief that quickly turned into anger. What is wrong with you? He shouted. Why is the gate locked? Why is there a sign about the IRS? And why the hell aren't you answering your phone? I looked at him. He was 42 years old, but in that moment he looked like a toddler throwing a tantrum. A toddler in a $300 polo shirt. I told you, Andre, I said. The government is seizing everything. I locked the gate to keep the auditors out. Stop lying, Winston. It was Paige. She stepped out from behind Andre. She took off her sunglasses and threw them onto my coffee table. She looked around my modest living room with a look of pure disgust curling her lip as if she smelled something rotting. We called your lawyer, she spat. We called the county clerk. There is no audit. There is no seizure. You own this land free and clear. You are lying to us to hoard your money. I looked at Paige. Her blonde hair was perfectly coiffed, her makeup flawless. She was a beautiful woman on the outside. But inside she was nothing but barbed wire and ice. Get out of my house, Paige, I said. I did not invite you in. This is my husband, his house too, she screamed, stepping closer to me. He grew up here. He has rights. He has the right to knock, I said. And he has the right to treat his father with respect, neither of which he is doing. Respect. Andre laughed, a bitter, high-pitched sound. You want respect? You just told me you spent $50,000 on a suit. You stole my son, his future dad. You stole it. I stood up then. My knees popped, but I rose to my full height. I am 6'2". I tower over Andre. I did not steal anything. I said, my voice hardening. That money was a gift. A gift I chose to revoke because you chose to erase me from my grandson is life. You want me to pay for Stanford, but you do not want me in the graduation photos. You cannot have it both ways, son. We were protecting him, Paige interjected, stepping between me and Andre. She poked a manicured finger at my chest. Protecting him from what? From the man who taught him how to read. From the man who fixed his bicycle, from your influence, Paige hissed. The room went silent. Even Judge stopped growling. My influence? I asked quietly. Yes, Paige said. Her eyes were wide with a venomous intensity. We have worked so hard to get Malik away from this life. The grease, the dirt, the small-mindedness. We want him to be better than you, Winston. We want him to be sophisticated, and every time he comes here, he comes home smelling like oil and talking about cars. It is regression. She took a breath, and then she said the words that sealed her fate. It is just like your wife, she said. I froze. Do not speak about Rose, I warned. My voice was a low rumble. "Oh, I will speak about her," Paige said, smiling cruelly. "Because she is the root of the problem." Rose coddled Andre. She spoiled him, oiled. She told him he was perfect just the way he was. She didn't push him. She didn't have ambition. She was just a simple housewife who thought love was enough. Paige walked around the room, picking up a framed photo of Rose and me from our wedding day. She looked at it with disdain. "Look at Andre," she said, gesturing to my son, who was standing there looking at the floor. "He struggles because of her. She made him soft. She made him weak. If she had been a stronger woman, maybe Andre wouldn't need your money right now. Maybe he would be a real man instead of this." She tossed the photo back onto the table. It landed face down. The glass cracked. That sound, the sound of the glass cracking, it snapped something inside me. Rose was a saint. She worked double shifts at the diner to help me buy this land. She nursed Andre through pneumonia when he was 5 years old, staying awake for 3 days straight. She died of cancer 10 years ago, holding my hand, telling me to take care of our boy. And this woman, this stranger, she dared to stand in Rose's house and blame her for Andre's failures. I looked at Andre. I waited. I waited for him to defend his mother. I waited for him to scream, to slap Paige, to do something, anything. But Andre just stood there. He looked at his shoes. He was afraid of his wife. He was more afraid of losing her approval than he was of dishonoring his mother, his memory. That was the moment my son died to me. I looked at Paige. The anger in my chest was gone, replaced by a cold, deadly clarity. "You are right, Paige," I said softly. She looked surprised. Yes," I said. "Rose was too kind. She loved too much. She let Andre get away with everything. And I made the same mistake. I thought if I gave you money, if I fixed your cars, if I paid your bills, you would eventually learn to stand on your own 2 feet. I walked over to the corner of the room where Judge was sitting. The massive dog was watching me, waiting for a command. His muscles were tense, coiled like springs. "But I am done fixing things," I said. "And I am done with you disrespecting this house." I reached down and unclipped Judge's leash. The metallic click echoed in the silence. Andre looked up. His eyes went wide. "Dad, what are you doing, Judge?" I said, my voice sharp and commanding. The dog stood up. He let out a bark that shook the windows. He bared his teeth, white daggers in a mouth of black. "Guard," I ordered, pointing at Paige. Judge lunged. He did not bite her. He was trained better than that. He charged across the room and stopped inches from her legs, snapping his jaws with a terrifying sound. Paige screamed. She fell back onto the sofa, her designer bag flying across the room. "Get him away!" she shrieked, kicking her legs. "Get him away!" Judge stood over her, barking ferociously, growling deep in his throat. Saliva dripped from his jaws onto her expensive silk blouse. "Dad, call him off!" Andre yelled, backing away toward the door. "He is going to kill her." I looked at my watch. I lit my cigar again, taking my time. "I warned you," I said. "I told you to get off my property." "Winston, please," Paige sobbed. She was terrified. The arrogance was gone, replaced by the primal fear of a predator. I walked over to the door and held it open. "I will give you 10 seconds, I said. 10 seconds before I give him the attack command. And Judge hasn't eaten since yesterday. 1. Andre grabbed Paige's arm and hauled her up. She was shaking so hard she couldn't stand. 2. Judge snapped at Andre's heels, herding them toward the door like sheep. 3. They stumbled out onto the porch. Andre almost tripped down the stairs. Paige lost a shoe, but she didn't stop to get it. 4. They ran to the Range Rover. I had never seen them move so fast. They didn't look high class now. They looked like what they were, cowards running from the truth. They scrambled into the car, slamming the doors. Andre fumbled with the keys, dropping them on the floor mat. 5. I stood on the porch with Judge by my side. I patted his head. "Good boy." The engine roared to life. Andre threw the car into reverse, hitting my mailbox and knocking it over. He didn't care. He spun the wheel and tore down the driveway. As the car spun around, Paige rolled down the window. Her face was twisted with hate, mascara running down her cheeks. "You crazy old man!" she screamed, her voice cracking. "You are insane. You think you won? You wait!" She pointed a shaking finger at me. "We are going to declare you incompetent. We are going to put you in a home. Winston, A dirty, rot-filled nursing home, and I am going to sell this dump. I will sell it for scraps. I will burn it down. You hear me?" The car sped away, disappearing in a cloud of dust. I stood there watching them go. I looked down at the crushed hydrangeas where they had parked. I looked at the broken mailbox. I looked at Judge. "They are going to try, son," I whispered to the dog. "They are going to try to take everything." I walked back inside. I picked up the photo of Rose from the table. The glass was shattered, but her smile was still there, gentle, loving. I carefully removed the photo from the broken frame. I brushed a piece of glass off her face. "I am sorry, Rose," I whispered. "I tried to be kind. I tried to do it your way." I opened the drawer of my desk and placed the photo inside next to my Colt 1911 pistol. But kindness didn't work. Now I have to do it my way. I picked up the phone. I dialed my lawyer again. "Get the paperwork ready for a restraining order," I said, "and find out who the best competency lawyer in the state is. My son is going to try to have me committed." I hung up. The house was quiet again, but it wasn't a peaceful quiet. It was the quiet of a fortress preparing for a siege. I sat back down in my chair. I stroked Judge's head. Let them come, I thought. Let them bring their doctors and their lawyers and their lies. I was Winston Collier. I had built this life with my bare hands, and I would burn it to the ground before I let them take it from me. The sun had gone down hours ago, leaving my workshop bathed in the deep blue shadows of the Georgia night. The air cooled down, but the smell of the day's work hung heavy, a mix of gasoline, sawdust, and the humid earth outside. I sat at my workbench, the single overhead lamp casting a circle of yellow light on the dismantled carburetor of a 1972 Chevelle. My hands moved automatically, cleaning the valves, adjusting the float, but my mind was miles away. My Rottweiler Judge was sleeping by the door, but suddenly his ears pricked up. He let out a low whine, not a growl. A growl meant danger. A whine meant something else. I heard the sound of bicycle tires crunching on the gravel driveway. It was a slow, hesitant sound. I wiped my hands on a rag and stood up. I walked to the bay door and slid it open just enough to see out. Under the pale light of the security lamp stood a figure, tall, lanky, wearing a hoodie pulled up over his head. But I knew that posture. I knew the way he held his shoulders a little too tight, just like his grandmother Rose used to. "Malik." "Grandpa," he whispered. His voice cracked. "Come inside, son," I said, stepping back. "Leave the bike by the compressor." Malik walked into the shop. He pushed back his hood. My heart broke right then and there. His eyes were red and swollen. His face, usually bright with the optimism of youth, looked gray and defeated. He was 18 years old, a Stanford admit a brilliant young man, but tonight he looked like a lost child. I didn't say anything. I just pulled out the metal stool I kept for him. The one he used to sit on when he was 10 years old, watching me fix brakes. "Sit," I said. He sat down. He didn't look at me. He looked at his hands, which were twisting the strings of his hoodie. "Why didn't you come, Grandpa?" he asked. The question hung in the air like smoke. I leaned against the workbench, crossing my arms over my chest. "Is that what you came here to ask me?" Malik looked up. Tears were streaming down his face now. "Mom and Dad said, they said you called on Saturday morning. They said you were slurring your words. They said you told them you would rather stay home with a bottle of whiskey than watch me walk across a stage." I felt a flash of heat in my chest, an anger so pure it almost blinded me. They had accused me of being a drunk. Me. A man who had one beer on Sundays and a cigar on Tuesdays. A man who had never missed a day of work in 50 years. They didn't just lie about my presence. They tried to assassinate my character in the eyes of the person I loved most. I took a deep breath. I reached into the pocket of my coveralls and pulled out my old flip phone. I didn't defend myself. I didn't yell. I just navigated to the call log. "Saturday morning," I said, handing him the phone. "Look at the time. 9 a.m. Outgoing call to Andre. Duration 2 minutes. Malik looked at the screen. "Now go to the messages," I said. "Open the one from your mother sent right after that call." Malik pressed the button. I watched his eyes scan the small pixelated screen. I knew exactly what it said. "Don't bother coming, Winston. You are an embarrassment. Stay in your hole." Malik gasped. He read it again. Then he looked at the next one. "Tell Malik you are sick. If you show up, I will call security." He dropped the phone on the workbench. It clattered loudly in the quiet shop. They lied, he whispered. They told me you didn't care. I walked over to him and put a hand on his shoulder. His frame was shaking. Malik, look at me. He looked up, his eyes searching mine for an anchor. I am going to teach you the most important lesson you will ever learn, I said, my voice low and steady. It is a lesson they don't teach at Stanford. It is the mechanic's rule. I pointed to the carburetor on the table. When a customer brings me a car, they tell me all kinds of things. They say they changed the oil. They say they never drove it hard. They say the noise just started yesterday. I listen. I nod. But I don't believe a word of it. I picked up a wrench. I opened the hood, I said. I look at the oil. I look at the belts. I look at the wear on the gears. Because the machine doesn't lie. The machine tells you exactly what happened. I looked Malik dead in the eye. A man is the same way, son. A man can say he loves you. A man can say he respects you. A man can say he is doing everything for your own good. But you never listen to his mouth. You watch his hands. You watch what he does. I pointed to the empty space in the garage where the Mustang used to be. I spent 5 years building a car for you, Malik. Every bolt, every wire. I sold it yesterday. Do you know why? Malik shook his head. Because your father needed money, I said. Because he and your mother have dug themselves into a hole so deep they can't see the sky. I sold your graduation gift to save them from their own greed. That is what I did. That is my action. Malik wiped his face with his sleeve. He looked angry now, not at me, but at the betrayal. They have been lying to me about everything he said. They act like we are rich. They act like we are better than everyone else. But I hear them fighting at night. I hear Dad crying about the bank. I nodded. Listen to me, Malik. This is the hard part. I need you to be strong, stronger than your father. I pulled up a chair and sat knee to knee with him. I have a plan, I said. I am going to make sure you go to college. I am going to make sure you have a future. But right now, I need to teach your parents a lesson they should have learned 20 years ago. What are you going to do? Malik asked, fear flickering in his eyes. I am going to let them fall, I said. I am going to stop catching them. And when they hit the bottom, they are either going to break or they are going to wake up. I reached out and took his hands. They were soft hands, scholar's hands, but they had strength in them. But here is the test, Malik. This is the test of your manhood. You cannot tell them I have money. You cannot tell them we talked. You have to go back to that house and pretend you believe their lies. You have to watch them spiral, and you have to trust me. Can you do that? Malik looked at the empty spot where the Mustang had been. He looked at the text message on the phone. He looked at my grease-stained coveralls. He took a breath. He sat up straighter. I can do it, Grandpa. Good, I said. I reached into my pocket and pulled out a single $100 bill. It was crumpled and smelled of tobacco. Take this, I said. Put it in your shoe. A man always keeps a getaway fund. I don't need. Take it, I ordered. He took it. Now go home, I said, standing up. Before they realize you are gone, ride your bike fast. And Malik. He stopped at the door. Yeah, I am proud of you. Not because you got into Stanford, but because you rode your bike 5 miles in the dark to find the truth. That is what a collier does. I love you, Grandpa, he said. He pulled his hood up and disappeared into the night. I watched him go. I felt a mixture of pride and dread. I had sent him back into the lion's den. But he was armed with the truth now. I closed the shop door and locked it. I turned off the lights. I went into my small house and poured myself a glass of water. My hands were shaking slightly. It wasn't easy turning my grandson into a double agent against his own parents. I sat in the dark for a long time. Then I decided to check the perimeter. I always walked the property line before bed. Judge walked beside me as I patrolled the fence line. The night air was filled with the chirping of crickets. I thought about Andre, my son. I wondered what he was doing right now. Was he feeling guilty? Was he worrying about Malik? Across town in the expensive rental mansion in Buckhead, Malik was finding out the answer. He had ridden his bike hard, his lungs burning. He stashed the bike in the bushes down the street so his parents wouldn't hear the garage door. He crept through the back garden and climbed the trellis to his bedroom window, just like he used to do when he was a kid. He slipped inside his room and changed his clothes. He lay on his bed, staring at the ceiling, his heart pounding. Then he heard voices. They were coming from the kitchen below. His parents thought he was asleep. They were talking loud. He crept to his door and opened it a crack. It was Paige's voice. We have to do it, Andre. It is the only way. Then he heard his father. Andre sounded weak, defeated. But Paige, he is my dad. A competency hearing. That is extreme. It is not extreme, Andre Page shouted. Did you see him today? He is delusional. He thinks the IRS is after him. He is hoarding money. He sold the Mustang and spent it on a suit. He is obviously senile. He has dementia. Andre, I don't know. If we don't act now, he's going to squander everything. Paige continued, her voice dropping to a hiss. That land is worth millions. If we get power of attorney, we can control the assets. We can pay off the debts. We can save the house. Do you want to be homeless? Do you want Malik to know we are broke? Malik held his breath. He pressed his ear against the doorframe. No, Andre whispered. I don't want that. Then call Dr. Stevens tomorrow, Paige said. He owes us a favor. Tell him your father is erratic. Tell him he is dangerous. We need that diagnosis, Andre. We need him declared incompetent before the end of the month. Malik slid down to the floor. He pulled his knees to his chest. His grandfather wasn't the one who was sick. His parents were plotting to lock his grandfather away. They were going to steal his life to pay for their mistakes. Malik touched the $100 bill inside his shoe. He remembered what I told him. Watch what they do. He knew what he had to do. He had to be the spy. He had to be the soldier. Because the war had just begun, and his parents were coming for the only man who had ever told him the truth. The morning sun was hitting the tin roof of my shop with a rhythm that sounded like a ticking clock. I was not working on a car today. I was sitting on my porch drinking black coffee and waiting. My grandson Malik had risked everything to warn me the night before. He told me they were coming. He told me they were going to try to take my mind, since they could not take my money. A conservatorship. It is a fancy legal word for a cage. It means you are legally dead while you are still breathing. It means a judge gives another person, usually a family member, total control over your wallet, your medical decisions, and your life. Andre and Paige wanted to declare me incompetent. They wanted to say I had dementia. They wanted to tell the world that Winston Collier, the man who could rebuild a V8 engine blindfolded, could not be trusted to tie his own shoes. I heard the car before I saw it. It was not the Range Rover. It was a gray sedan, a city car government issue. It was sputtering. I could hear a loose belt squealing and a distinct knocking sound in the radiator. A mechanic knows a car in distress, and this car was crying for help. The sedan pulled up to my gate. I had unlocked it this morning. I wanted them to come in. A trap does not work if the door is closed. A woman stepped out. She was in her 40s wearing a beige suit that looked uncomfortable in the Georgia heat. She held a thick clipboard against her chest like a shield. She looked nervous. She looked like a woman who was doing something she knew was wrong, but she needed the paycheck. I stood up. I did not yell. I did not wave a shotgun. I smiled, a polite, welcoming smile. Good morning, ma'am, I called out. You might want to check your fan belt. That squealing is going to cost you an alternator if you aren't careful. The woman paused. She blinked. She was expecting a crazy old man. She was expecting the violent, paranoid hoarder that Paige had described in her report. She was not expecting a calm man offering free automotive advice. Mr. Collier, she asked, walking up the steps. That is me, but my friends call me Win. And you are? My name is Linda Tate, she said, flashing a badge. I am with Adult Protective Services. We received a report concerning your welfare, Mr. Collier. A report regarding self-neglect and potential cognitive decline. I nodded slowly. I motioned to the empty rocking chair beside me. Well, Ms. Tate, it is a hot day. Why don't you have a seat? I just brewed a fresh pot of coffee. Unless you are here to arrest me, in which case I might need to put on my shoes. Linda looked at the chair. She looked at me. She sat down. I am not here to arrest you, Mr. Collier, she said, opening her file. I am here to conduct a competency evaluation. Your family, specifically your daughter-in-law, Mrs. Paige Collier, has filed an emergency petition. She claims you are exhibiting signs of advanced dementia. She claims you are delusional, paranoid, and squandering your assets on irrational purchases. I took a sip of my coffee. Irrational purchases, I repeated. You mean my suit? Linda looked at her notes. The report says you sold a family heirloom vehicle and spent the proceeds on frivolous luxury items while claiming the IRS was seizing your property. I chuckled. It was a deep, genuine sound. Ms. Tate, let me ask you a question. If a man works for 50 years and wants to buy an Armani suit, is that dementia? Or is that just enjoying the fruits of his labor? Linda did not smile. She clicked her pen. Mr. Collier, I need to ask you some standard questions. Can you tell me what year it is? It is 2024, I said. Who is the president? I told her. Can you count backward from 100 by 7's 93, 86, 79, 72, 65? I kept going. I did not stop until I hit single digits. I did it while pouring her a cup of coffee. My hand was steady. My eyes were clear. Linda stopped writing. She looked confused. Mr. Collier, you seem remarkably lucid. The medical report submitted by Dr. Stevens suggests you have significant memory gaps and confusion. Dr. Stevens, I said, tasting the name. Is that the doctor who plays golf with my son at the country club? The one who drives a 2022 Porsche Cayenne that I fixed last summer? I haven't seen Dr. Stevens in 6 months. How can he diagnose my memory if he hasn't looked me in the eye? Linda shifted in her seat. She knew something was wrong. Bureaucrats hate it when the paperwork does not match the reality. She looked around my property. She saw the clean yard. She saw the organized workshop. She saw Judge my Rottweiler sleeping peacefully in the shade. This was not the home of a chaotic madman. Ms. Tate, I said, standing up, I notice you keep looking at your watch. You seem stressed. And your car, that knocking sound is driving me crazy just thinking about it. It has been making that noise for a week, she admitted, sighing. I took it to the shop, but they said it would cost $500 to diagnose. Pop the hood, I said. Excuse me. Pop the hood, I repeated, walking down the steps. I am not senile, Ms. Tate. I am a master mechanic. Let me show you what my confused brain can do. She hesitated, but then she walked to her car and pulled the latch. I lifted the hood. I listened. I didn't need a computer. I needed my ears and my hands. Loose tensioner pulley, I said. And your coolant reservoir is cracked. That is why it is knocking. It is overheating slightly. I walked into my shop. Linda followed me. She watched as I navigated my tools with the precision of a surgeon. I grabbed a wrench, a new clamp, and a bottle of sealant. I walked back to her car. In 5 minutes, I tightened the pulley and patched the reservoir. Start it up, I said. She turned the key. The engine purred. The squeal was gone. The knock was gone. Linda looked at me with wide eyes. That is amazing, she whispered. I wiped my hands on a rag. Ms. Tate, a man with dementia cannot diagnose a tensioner pulley by ear. A man with dementia cannot navigate a workshop full of dangerous tools without hurting himself. Paige told you I was crazy because she wants to control my money. She wants to be my guardian so she can sell this land to pay off her debts. I walked back to the porch and picked up my tablet. I had bought it yesterday along with the suit. I tapped the screen. But don't take my word for it, I said. I want to show you something. I handed her the tablet. It was the video from my security cameras. The cameras Andre and Paige didn't know existed. Linda watched the screen. She saw the Range Rover skid into the driveway. She saw Andre attacking my gate with a tire iron. She saw Paige screaming, throwing her shoes, kicking my dog. She saw 2 people who looked unhinged, violent, and dangerous. And she saw me, standing calmly on the porch, smoking a cigar. This was 2 days ago, I said. Does that look like a concerned son checking on his sick father? Or does that look like a home invasion? Linda stared at the video. She watched Paige throw her expensive handbag at my head. Oh my God, she whispered. I took the tablet back. I have already sent this video to my lawyer, I said. We are preparing a countersuit for elder abuse intimidation and filing a false medical report. If you sign that paper declaring me incompetent, Ms. Tate, you will be named as a co-conspirator in that lawsuit. You will lose your license. You might even go to jail. I leaned in closer. Now I fixed your car for free because I am a nice man, but I will not let you or anyone else take my freedom. Linda Tate closed her file. Her hands were shaking. She stood up abruptly. Mr. Collier, she said, her voice trembling, I apologize for the intrusion. It appears the initial report was grossly filed with inaccuracies. She walked quickly to her car. She looked like she wanted to be anywhere else in the world. She opened the door, then stopped. She looked back at me. Mrs. Collier called me 5 times this morning, she said. She told me you would be violent. She told me to bring police back up. She didn't tell you that because she was scared, I said. She told you that because she wanted me provoked. She wanted a scene. Linda nodded. She understood now. She realized she had been used as a weapon. "Mr. Collier," she said, "you are the sanest person I have met all week." She got in her car. I saw her pick up her phone before she even pulled out of the driveway. I saw her dialing furiously. I knew who she was calling. As she drove away, I imagined the conversation. I imagined Paige sitting in her rental mansion waiting for the good news, waiting to hear that the old fool was in a straitjacket. Instead, she was going to hear Linda Tate screaming at her, "Don't you ever involve me in your dirty games again, Paige. That man is sharper than you are. He fixed my car, and he has video of you acting like a lunatic." I am closing this file. I watched the dust settle on the road. I sat back down in my rocking chair. I felt a deep satisfaction. They tried to take my mind. They failed. Now they were desperate, and desperate people make mistakes. I checked my phone. My lawyer had sent a text. The eviction notice has been served. They have 30 days to vacate the premises or pay the full balance of the land contract. I smiled. Round 2 goes to the mechanic. But I knew Paige. She wouldn't stop. She was cornered now. The bank was coming for her house. I had cut off her money. And now her plan to control me had blown up in her face. She was going to lash out. I looked at the sky. Dark clouds were gathering. A storm was coming. Let it rain, I thought. I have weathered worse storms than Paige Collier. I called Malik. "Stay low, son," I said when he answered. "Your mother is about to have a very bad day. And when she does, she is going to look for someone to blame. Don't let it be you," Grandpa Malik whispered. "Are you okay?" "I am fine, son," I said. "I just fixed a squeaky belt. Now get back to studying. You are going to Stanford, and nothing your parents do is going to stop that." I hung up. I lit another cigar. The war was far from over, but today I had drawn a line in the sand, and they had just learned that crossing it had consequences. The storm I predicted did not take long to arrive. It came in the form of a certified letter taped to the front door of the mansion my son was renting. I did not see it myself, but Malik told me about it. He said it was pink. In the world of real estate, pink is the color of death. It means foreclosure. It means the bank is done asking nicely. But the real blow came 3 days later. I was in my shop organizing my socket wrenches when my phone rang. It was Andre. He had not called since the day he tried to break down my gate. "Dad," he whispered. His voice sounded hollow, like he was speaking from the bottom of a well. I put down the wrench. "I am here. I lost my job, Dad. They fired me." I did not act surprised. My lawyer had already told me. When you are $200,000 in debt and desperate, you start making bad choices. Andre had tried to move some numbers around in the company accounts. He thought he could borrow $10,000 from the marketing budget to pay off his credit card and put it back next month. But corporate accounting sees everything. "I am sorry to hear that, son," I said. "Truly. I did not say I told you so. I did not say you should have lived within your means. A man kicking his son when he is down is not a father. He is a bully." But then the phone shuffled. I heard the sharp intake of breath that meant Paige had taken the receiver. "Are you happy now, Winston?" she screamed. Her voice was shrill, hysterical. "Are you happy? Your son is unemployed. We are losing the house. We are going to be on the street in 30 days. Is this what you wanted?" I took a puff of my cigar. "I did not want this, Paige. I wanted you to be honest. I wanted you to live a real life, not a fantasy." "Honest," she laughed, a manic sound. "You want honesty. Here is some honesty. This is your fault, Winston. All of it. My fault," I asked, calm as a frozen lake. "Yes. If you had just given us that tuition money, Andre would not have panicked. He would not have taken that money from the company. He did it because he was trying to be a good father. He did it because you abandoned us. You pushed him to this." I closed my eyes. The audacity was breathtaking. It was a masterpiece of delusion. She was blaming me for my son's crime because I refused to let them rob me first. "Paige," I said, my voice low. "Andre is 42 years old. He made a choice. You made a choice to buy a boat you could not afford. You made a choice to lease cars you did not need. Do not put your sins on my conscience. My conscience is clear. Your conscience is black," she shrieked. "You are a selfish, hoarding old man. But listen to me, Winston. We are not done. You think you can starve us out. You think you can sit on that 5 acres of gold while we rot. Watch your back, because if we go down, we are taking you with us." The line went dead. I sat there in the silence of the shop. I looked at the tools hanging on the wall. Each one had a purpose. A hammer to build, a wrench to tighten, a saw to cut. Paige was a saw. She only knew how to divide, how to sever. I knew she was not making an idle threat. A woman like Paige does not accept defeat. She escalates. 2 days passed. The air in Atlanta turned heavy and humid, the kind of weather that makes your clothes stick to your skin. I was working on a 1955 Chevy Bel Air, putting the finishing touches on the chrome bumper. It was good, honest work, the kind that clears your mind. Then I heard a car. It was not the Range Rover. It was a white pickup truck with the city seal on the door. Department of Environmental Protection. My stomach tightened. In the auto repair business, the DEP is the Grim Reaper. They have the power to shut you down for a spilled cup of oil. A man stepped out. He was tall, wearing a hard hat and a high-visibility vest. He held a clipboard and a camera. He did not look friendly. "Mr. Winston Collier," he asked, walking past the gate without waiting for an invitation. "That is me," I said, wiping my hands on a rag. "Can I help you? My name is Inspector Davis." "We received an anonymous tip regarding illegal dumping of hazardous waste on this property, specifically waste oil and transmission fluid leaking into the groundwater." "An anonymous tip," I repeated. I knew exactly who the tipster was. Paige. She knew the one thing that could destroy a mechanic faster than debt: environmental contamination. If the land was declared toxic, it could be seized for remediation. The cleanup costs would be in the millions. I would have to sell the land just to pay the fines. "I have been running this shop for 30 years, Inspector," I said. "I recycle every drop of oil. I have the receipts to prove it. My tanks are double-walled steel." Inspector Davis did not look at me. He looked at the ground. He walked over to the patch of dirt behind the shop, the spot where I used to park the old tractors. He knelt down. He pulled out a small shovel. He dug a few inches into the soil. The dirt came up black, oily. It smelled of diesel. I frowned. That was impossible. I never dumped oil there. I was meticulous. Davis took a photo. He stood up, shaking his head. "Looks like saturation," he said, scribbling on his clipboard. "And look over there." He pointed to the drainage ditch that ran along the fence line. There was a sheen on the water, a rainbow slick of oil. I walked over. My heart hammered against my ribs. I touched the water. It was fresh oil, clean oil. Someone had poured it there. Recently. I looked at the fence. The wire mesh was bent slightly at the bottom, enough for a person to squeeze through, or enough for someone to reach through with a bucket. "This is a setup," I said, my voice rising. "Someone put this here. I did not do this." Inspector Davis held up his hand, stopping me. "Mr. Collier, I do not deal in stories. I deal in soil samples. And right now your soil is testing positive for hydrocarbons, high levels." He walked back to his truck and pulled out a roll of bright orange tape. He walked across the front of my shop. He taped the door shut. He taped the gate. He slapped a large red sticker on the entrance. "Cease and desist. Property under environmental investigation, Mr. Collier." Inspector Davis said, handing me a pink slip of paper. "This is a formal notice of violation. You are ordered to cease all commercial operations immediately." He looked me in the eye. "You have 24 hours to provide a complete manifest of all waste disposal for the last 5 years, and you need to hire a certified remediation crew to assess the damage. If you cannot prove this is contained..." He paused, looking at the sprawling 5 acres of prime real estate. "The city will exercise its right to seize the property for emergency cleanup. The cost will be leaned against the deed. Effectively, sir, you will lose the land." I stood there holding the pink slip. It felt heavy like a brick. 24 hours, I whispered. "If you cannot pay for the cleanup," Davis added, "the city will auction the land to developers who can. It is the law." He got back in his truck. As he drove away, I saw him pick up his phone. He made a call. I wondered who he was calling. Was it his boss? Or was it someone else? Maybe someone who wanted this land, someone who had a deal with a desperate woman named Paige. I looked at the orange tape sealing my life work. I looked at the oil slick in the ditch. They had played their ace. They framed me. They knew I had money, but they knew I loved this land more than the money. They wanted to force me to liquidate. They wanted to break me. I walked over to the fence where the oil had been poured. I knelt down. I saw footprints in the mud on the other side. They were small footprints. Sneakers. Not Andrea's loafers. Not Paige's heels. They hired someone. Or maybe... I shook the thought away. I was 71 years old. I was tired. My son hated me. My daughter-in-law was a viper. And now the city wanted to take my home. I looked at Judge. He was whining, pacing back and forth in front of the taped door. "It is okay, boy," I said, my voice sounding old even to my own ears. I reached into my pocket and pulled out my phone. I stared at the screen. I could call my lawyer. I could call the EPA. But this wasn't a legal battle anymore. This was a street fight. Paige wanted to play dirty. She wanted to pour oil on my grave. I lit a cigar. My hand was shaking, but not from fear, from rage. 24 hours. I took a deep breath of the humid air. It smelled of rain and betrayal. "I am not going to explain anything," I whispered to the empty yard. I turned and walked toward the house. "I am going to find out who poured that oil. And when I do, God help them." The orange tape flapping against my workshop door sounded like a dying bird. Cease and desist. Property under investigation. To the average man, those bright stickers look like the end of the world. They look like the government boot coming down on your neck to crush the life out of you. But I am not the average man. I am Winston Collier, and I have lived in Atlanta long enough to know that regulations are just like spider webs. They only trap the flies. The hornets fly right through them. I sat on my porch watching the sun go down. I had 24 hours before they came back to seize my land. Paige and Andre probably had champagne on ice right now. They thought they had checkmated me. They thought that by planting a few gallons of oil in my ditch, they could trigger a foreclosure and force a distress sale. It was a clever plan. Evil, but clever. But they forgot one thing. I have been fixing cars in this city for 40 years. I have fixed cars for teachers. I have fixed cars for judges. And 20 years ago, I fixed a 1968 Pontiac GTO for a young man named Marcus Patterson. He was just a junior clerk at the city planning office back then with no money and a car that wouldn't start. I fixed his transmission for free because I liked his ambition. Today, Marcus Patterson is the director of the Department of Environmental Protection for the state of Georgia. I pulled out my phone. I didn't look up the number. I knew it by heart. "Hello." A deep voice answered. "Marcus," I said, taking a sip of my iced tea. "It is Winston." I haven't heard that voice in a while. Is the old GTO still running? Like a top Marcus. "Listen, I have a situation. One of your boys came by today. Inspector Davis. Nice kid, but he seems to think my shop is a toxic waste dump. He slapped a seizure notice on my gate. There was a pause on the line, then the sound of a chair scraping. A seizure notice on your shop. Winston, that is impossible. Your shop is the model for our Green Initiative program. You were the first one in the district to install the double-walled containment tanks." "I know that," I said, "but Inspector Davis found some oil in the ditch, fresh oil, and he seemed very eager to shut me down, almost like he was on a schedule." I heard Marcus typing furiously on a keyboard. "I see the report here," Marcus muttered. "Anonymous tip. Priority handling. This came from the top of the queue. Winston, this smells wrong." "It smells like my daughter-in-law," I said. Marcus let out a low whistle. "Family trouble." "You could say that." "Marcus, I need you to do two things for me. First, I need you to pull the file on that anonymous tip. I want the IP address. I want the phone number. I want the timestamp. And second, I need you to be here tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. I want you to bring the full certification team. Consider it done when. Nobody messes with the man who keeps my GTO alive." I hung up. I slept like a baby that night. The next morning at 7:55 a.m., the white pickup truck returned. Inspector Davis hopped out looking smug. Behind him was a massive tanker truck and a crew of men in white hazmat suits. They were here to start the remediation. That was code for digging up my yard and charging me $1 million for the privilege. "Mr. Collier," Davis shouted, walking up the driveway, "your 24 hours are up. Did you find those manifests? Or are we taking possession of the site?" I stood on the porch drinking coffee. I was wearing my best coveralls, pressed, clean. "Good morning, Inspector," I said. "You are early." "I am on a schedule," Davis snapped. "Open the gate. My crew needs to start excavating the contaminated soil." I walked down the steps slowly. My dog Judge trotted beside me. "Before you start digging up my hydrangeas, son, I think you should look at something." I pointed down the road. A black sedan with government plates was turning into the driveway. It was followed by two more city vehicles. Davis squinted. "Who is that?" The sedan stopped. The door opened. Marcus Patterson stepped out. He was 6'4", wearing a suit that cost more than Davis's truck. He walked with the heavy, confident stride of a man who runs the city. Inspector Davis went pale. "Director Patterson." "Sir, I didn't know you were coming to this site." Marcus walked right past him and shook my hand. "Good to see you, Wynn. Good to see you, Marcus." Davis looked like he was going to vomit. "Sir, you know this man?" "I know him," Marcus said, turning his cold gaze on the inspector. "And I know this shop." "Inspector, did you bother to check the historical compliance records before you issued a seizure order?" Davis stammered. Well, the anonymous tip was urgent, sir. The oil in the ditch." I walked over to the ditch. The oil slick was still there. "Inspector," I said, "I want you to kneel down and smell that oil." "What?" "Smell it," I ordered. Davis knelt down. He sniffed. "It smells like transmission fluid," he said. "Correct," I said. "Now smell this." I held up a rag from my pocket, soaked in the fluid I actually used in my shop. Davis sniffed. "It smells different. Sweet." "That is because I switched to synthetic biodegradable fluid 10 years ago," I said. "It is a vegetable base. It is green. The oil in that ditch is mineral-based. It is the cheap stuff you buy at AutoZone. The kind my son uses in his leased BMW. I turned to Marcus, and regarding my compliance, I said, "Inspector Davis asked for my manifests." I walked to the shop door and tore the orange tape off. "Come inside, gentlemen." They followed me in. The shop was spotless, but I walked straight past the workbenches to the back, to the employee bathroom. I pushed the door open. There, hanging right above the toilet tank in a cheap plastic frame, was a certificate with a gold seal. City of Atlanta, Green Star certification, awarded to Collier Restorations for excellence in environmental safety, dated 2014. I pointed at it. "I hung it in here," I said, "because I think awards are for people with big egos. But, as you can see, Inspector, I was green before it was cool. My tanks are sealed. My drains go to a reclamation unit. You could eat off this floor." Marcus looked at the certificate, then at Davis. "You tried to seize a Green Star facility based on a puddle of oil in a ditch?" Marcus asked, his voice quiet and terrifying. Without checking the interior, without testing the fluid composition, Davis was shaking. "Sir, the pressure." The tip said, "Who made the call?" "Davis." Marcus barked. "It was a woman," Davis blurted out. "She called my personal cell. She said she was a concerned neighbor. She said if I didn't shut him down by noon today, she would call the news and say the department was ignoring toxic waste." Marcus pulled out a file from his briefcase. "We traced the number Wynn," he said, handing me a piece of paper. "It is a burner phone, but the GPS ping came from a residence in Buckhead, 4200 River Road." I looked at the address. It was Andre and Paige's rental house. They didn't just report me. They threatened a city official to speed up the process. They were so desperate to see me fall, they got sloppy. "Inspector Davis," I said, "you are going to take your hazmat crew and you are going to leave. And then you are going to write a report stating that this property is pristine." "Yes, sir," Davis squeaked. "Absolutely, sir." "And Marcus," I said, turning to my friend, "filing a false environmental report is a felony, isn't it? Class B felony?" Marcus nodded. "Punishable by up to 5 years in prison and a $50,000 fine, plus the cost of the investigation." "I want to press charges," I said. "But when," Marcus said gently, "that is your family." "They aren't family," I said, my voice hard as iron. "They are vandals. They vandalized my property and they vandalized my name. Book them, Marcus." Marcus nodded. He pulled out his phone. "Send a unit to 4200 River Road," he said into the receiver. "We have a suspect in the false reporting case. Bring them in for questioning." I watched them leave. The hazmat trucks backed out, beeping loudly. The threat was gone. My land was safe, but I wasn't celebrating. I felt a cold resolve settling in my gut. Paige had tried the nuclear option. Now it was my turn. I closed up the shop. I changed out of my coveralls and into the suit I had bought with Malik's tuition money. It fit perfectly. I got into my truck and drove downtown, not to the police station, to a steakhouse on the 40th floor of the tallest building in Atlanta. I walked in. The hostess looked at my weathered face and hesitated, but then she saw the suit. "Mr. Collier," she asked, "Mr. Blackwood is waiting for you in the private room." I walked back. Sitting at a corner table was a man who looked like a shark in human skin. Thomas Blackwood, the biggest real estate developer in the South. He had been trying to buy my 5 acres for a decade to build a luxury condo complex. I had always told him to go to hell. But today I sat down. Mr. Collier Blackwood said, smiling smoothly, "To what do I owe the pleasure? Did you finally decide to sell?" I poured myself a glass of water. "I am not selling," I said, "but I have a proposition." Blackwood raised an eyebrow. "I am listening." "You want my land?" I said. "My son wants my land. The city wants my land. Everyone wants a piece of Winston Collier." I pulled a folded document out of my pocket. It wasn't a deed. It was a contract I had drawn up with my lawyer the night before. "I want to develop the land," I said. "Joint venture. You put up the money. I put up the dirt. We build the condos. But there is a condition." "Name it," Blackwood said, his eyes gleaming with greed. "Nobody knows I am a partner," I said. "On paper, it looks like I sold it to you for pennies. It looks like I was forced out. It looks like I am broke." Blackwood looked confused. "Why would you want people to think you are broke? Most men want to look rich." Because I said, thinking of Paige's face when the police knocked on her door, "I am hunting rats, and rats only come out when they think the cat is dead." Blackwood laughed. He pulled out a gold pen. "You are a dangerous man, Winston." I pushed the contract across the table. "Sign it," I said, "and let's build an empire." He signed. I signed. With the stroke of a pen, I had just become a multi-millionaire on paper. But to the world and to my son, I was about to become a homeless, destitute old man. I walked out of the steakhouse. I checked my phone. There was a text from Malik. "Mom is screaming. The police are here. They are taking her in for questioning." I smiled. The trap was set. Now I just had to play the part of the dying victim. I got in my truck and drove toward the hospital. It was time for my next performance. Hospitals smell like bleach and bad news. It is a smell that sticks to your clothes and settles in the back of your throat. I was lying in a private room at Atlanta General, hooked up to a heart monitor that was beeping with a steady, rhythmic pulse. Beep, beep, beep. To anyone walking past the open door, I looked like a 71-year-old man on death's door. My eyes were closed, my breathing was shallow, and my skin looked gray under the harsh fluorescent lights, but looks can be deceiving. I was not dying, I was acting. I had called my old friend Dr. Marcus Harrison the night before. Marcus and I go way back. I fixed his first Corvette in 1985. He knows I am as healthy as a horse, but he also knows about the war I am fighting. When I told him I needed to stage a mild stroke to test the vultures circling my estate, he didn't even hesitate. He admitted me under observation for a suspected transient ischemic attack. It was the perfect trap. I lay there waiting. I knew they would come. They had to come. When the bank is threatening to foreclose on your house and the city has frozen your assets, a dying father is not a tragedy. He is a lottery ticket. I heard them before I saw them. I heard Paige's heels clicking frantically on the linoleum floor. I heard Andre arguing with a nurse about visitation hours. "Let us in," Andre shouted. "That is my father. He could be dying." The door burst open. I kept my eyes closed for a moment, letting them see me vulnerable. I wanted them to see the tubes. I wanted them to see the frailty. I wanted them to think they had finally won. Dad Andre's voice was trembling. He rushed to the side of the bed. I felt his hand grab mine. His palm was sweaty, clammy with fear. Not fear of losing me. Fear of losing the signature. I slowly fluttered my eyes open. I let out a low, wheezing breath. "Andre," I whispered. My voice was a dry rasp. "Is that you, son?" "Yes, Dad. I am here," Andre said. He squeezed my hand. "We are all here. Paige is here too." I shifted my gaze. Paige was standing at the foot of the bed. She was not crying. She looked like a hawk scanning a field for a mouse. She was clutching a leather folder against her chest so tight her knuckles were white. She looked terrible. Her hair was messy, her makeup was smeared. The stress of the police interrogation and the looming eviction was eating her alive. "Oh, Winston," she said, putting on a mask of concern that was so thin it was almost transparent. "You scared us to death. The doctor said you collapsed at the shop. I just got dizzy," I stammered, playing the part. Everything went black. "You are working too hard," Dad, Andre said, leaning in close. "You are 71. You shouldn't be out in that heat fixing cars. It is too much for you." I coughed, a rattle deep in my chest. "I have to work, son," I whispered. "The city, the fines. I have to save the land." "No, you don't," Paige interrupted, stepping to the side of the bed. She pushed Andre slightly out of the way. "You need to rest, Winston. Rest. You need to focus on getting better. Let us worry about the land. Let us worry about the bills." I looked at her. I saw the greed dancing in her eyes. It was ugly, how I asked weakly. "The accounts are frozen. The city says—" "We have a plan," Dad, Andre said. He looked at Paige for reassurance, then looked back at me. "We spoke to a lawyer, a specialist. He says we can unfreeze the assets and stop the city from seizing the property, but we need to act fast, like today." "What do I have to do?" I asked, closing my eyes again as if the conversation was exhausting me. Paige opened her leather folder. She pulled out a thick stack of documents. "You just need to sign this temporary authorization, Winston," she said, her voice smooth as oil. "It is just a standard form. It gives Andre the power to talk to the city on your behalf. It lets him handle the bank accounts so we can pay the remediation fines." I looked at the paper. At the top in bold letters it said, "Durable power of attorney." It wasn't temporary, it wasn't standard, it was a total surrender. If I signed that paper, Andre would have legal control over every dime I owned. He could sell the land, he could empty my savings, he could put me in a home and leave me there to rot. "It is a lot of pages," I mumbled. "We don't have time to read it all," Dad, Andre said, urgency creeping into his voice. "The doctor said you need to rest. Just sign it so we can fix this mess. We are doing this for you, to protect your legacy. My legacy." The word hung in the air. I looked at my son. I remembered him as a boy running around the shop with a plastic wrench helping me fix tires. I remembered the pride I felt when he graduated college. I remembered the day he got married and how I thought he had found happiness. Where did that boy go? How did he become this sweating, desperate man trying to trick his dying father out of his life's work? I looked at Paige. She had uncapped a pen. She was holding it out to me. "Here, Winston," she said. "Just sign right there on the X. Then you can sleep." I reached out with a trembling hand. I took the pen. I let it hover over the paper. I saw them hold their breath. They were so close. They could taste the millions. They could see their debts disappearing. I lowered the pen. Then I stopped. I looked up at them. I let a single tear roll down my cheek. It wasn't fake. I was crying for the loss of the family I thought I had. "I am disappointed in you," I whispered. Andre froze. "What? I am disappointed," I repeated, my voice gaining a little strength. "I raised you to be a man, Andre. I raised you to stand on your own 2 feet. And look at you. You are 42 years old and you are still waiting for me to bail you out." "Dad, please don't start," Andre said, glancing nervously at the heart monitor. "Not now." "And you, Paige," I said, turning my gaze to her. "You came into my house and insulted my wife. You called me an embarrassment. You tried to keep me from my grandson. And now you are here standing over my deathbed holding a contract. Winston, we are trying to help you." Paige snapped, her patience fraying. "Just sign the damn paper." I took a deep breath. "But," I sighed, "blood is blood. You are my family. And if this is the end, if this is really my time to go, I shouldn't leave you with nothing." Andre exhaled. "Thank you, Dad. Thank you. I knew you would understand." Paige smiled. It was a victorious, predatory smile. "Just sign it, Winston. Do it for Malik." "For Malik," I said softly. I put the pen to the paper. I started to write. My hand shook violently, making the signature jagged and messy. I signed my name. Paige snatched the paper away before the ink was even dry. She clutched it to her chest, closing her eyes in relief. "We did it," she whispered to Andre. "We got it." She quickly flipped through the pages to check the signature. She wanted to make sure it was legal. She wanted to see Winston Collier written in black and white. But as she looked at the page, her smile froze. Her eyes went wide. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. "What is it?" Andre asked. "Let me see." He looked over her shoulder. The document I had signed wasn't the power of attorney. While they were busy looking at the heart monitor, I had used a sleight of hand I learned from 40 years of card games in the shop. I had slid a different paper from under my pillow, a paper I had prepared with Dr. Harrison that morning. It was a hospital form, a standard anatomical gift form, Department of Donor Services. I, Winston Collier, hereby donate the following organs upon my death. And next to the checkbox for liver, I had written my name. "What is this?" Paige shrieked. "What the hell is this?" I sat up. I ripped the oxygen tube out of my nose. I pulled the heart monitor sensor off my finger. The beeping stopped, replaced by a long, flatline tone that I quickly silenced by hitting the off button. I swung my legs over the side of the bed. I stood up. I didn't look frail anymore. I stood tall, my shoulders back, my chest expanding with a deep, healthy breath. "That is a donation form, Paige," I said, my voice booming in the small room. You aren't sick," Andre stammered, backing away toward the door. "Oh, I am sick, son," I said, taking a step toward them. "I am sick of your lies. I am sick of your greed, and I am sick of you looking at me like I am a walking ATM machine." I snatched the power of attorney document from Paige's hand and ripped it in half. "You wanted me to sign something," I asked, holding up the donor form. "Well, there you go." I signed it. "You can have my gallbladder, Andre. You can have my liver. You can even have my old, tired heart if you can find a surgeon to cut it out." I tore the power of attorney again, throwing the pieces in their faces like confetti. "But you aren't getting my money, and you sure as hell aren't getting my land," Winston Page screamed. She looked like she was having a breakdown. "You tricked us. You can't do this. We are drowning. We are going to lose the house." "That sounds like a personal problem, Paige," I said, crossing my arms. "Maybe you should sell that boat, or maybe Andre can get a job cleaning toilets. I hear they are hiring at the stadium." "You old bastard." Paige lunged at me, her fingernails aiming for my face. Suddenly, the door flew open. "Get out!" It was Dr. Harrison. He was wearing his white coat and he looked furious. He wasn't acting. He had been listening from the hallway. "Dr. Harrison, you have to help us," Andre yelled. "My father is insane. He is having an episode. The only episode here is you harassment of my patient," Dr. Harrison said, stepping between me and Paige. "I have been monitoring his vitals. His blood pressure just spiked to dangerous levels because of you." He pointed to the door. "I am the chief of medicine at this hospital," Dr. Harrison said, his voice icy, "and I am ordering you to leave immediately. If you do not vacate this room in 10 seconds, I will call security and have you arrested for trespassing and creating a disturbance in a medical facility." "But we have rights," Paige yelled. "You have the right to remain silent," Dr. Harrison shouted. "Now get out." 2 large security guards appeared in the doorway behind the doctor. They looked ready to rumble. Andre grabbed Paige's arm. "Come on, Paige, we have to go." "No," Paige screamed, struggling against him. "He has the money, I know he has it." Andre dragged her out of the room. She was kicking and screaming, cursing my name, cursing the hospital, cursing the world. The guards followed them down the hall. We could hear Paige's screams fading away toward the elevators. I stood there in my hospital gown, breathing hard. Dr. Harrison closed the door. The silence returned to the room. He looked at me. He shook his head and smiled. "You are a cold son of a gun, Win," he said, "giving them your liver." That was cold. I sat back down on the bed. I felt tired now, real tired. The adrenaline was fading and the reality of what I had just done was settling in. "I just cut the last thread, Marcus," I said quietly. "They will never forgive me for this." Dr. Harrison walked over and poured me a cup of water. "They were trying to bury you, Win," he said. "You just dug yourself out." I took the water. My hand was shaking slightly. "They are homeless now," I said. "The bank will take the house next week." Dr. Harrison put a hand on my shoulder. "And that is when the real test begins," he said. "When they have nothing left, we will see who they really are." I nodded. I stood up and walked to the closet to get my clothes. My suit. The suit that cost $50,000. I put it on. I tied the tie. I looked in the mirror. I didn't see a dying man. I saw a man preparing for a funeral, the funeral of his son's ego. "I am checking out Marcus," I said. "Where are you going?" "I am going home," I said. "I have a feeling I'm going to have some house guests soon, and I need to get the guest room ready." "The guest room?" Marcus asked, confused. "I thought you said you were done with them." "I am," I said, putting on my hat. "But the guest room is not inside the house, Marcus. It is in the backyard." I smiled a grim, humorless smile. It is the old tent I use for camping. If they want to live on my land, they are going to learn what it feels like to sleep on the ground. Gravity is a funny thing. You spend your whole life trying to defy it, climbing ladders, building towers of debt, trying to float on hot air and lies. But eventually gravity always wins. And when you fall from a height built on fraud, you do not land softly. You shatter. I was sitting on my porch peeling an orange when I felt the vibration of the fall. It wasn't an earthquake. It was the silence of a phone that stopped ringing. For years, my son Andre only called me when he wanted something. But for the last 3 days since I walked out of that hospital room, there had been nothing. No threats, no pleas, just the dead silence of a reality check hitting home. My lawyer told me what happened. He has friends at the bank. He told me the eviction team arrived at the mansion at 8 in the morning. They didn't come quietly. They came with sheriff deputies and a locksmith. They gave Andre and Paige 15 minutes to grab their essentials. I can only imagine the scene. Paige screaming at the deputies, threatening to sue people she couldn't afford to pay. Andre crying in the driveway, watching the neighbors peek through their curtains. The same neighbors they had thrown parties for. The same neighbors they had tried so hard to impress with leased cars and catered dinners. And where were those friends now? I heard that Andre called Dr. Stevens, the man he played golf with every Sunday. He asked for a loan. Just a few thousand to get a hotel. Dr. Stevens blocked his number. He called his old college roommate, the one who ran a hedge fund. The roommate told his secretary to say he was out of the country. That is the thing about fair weather friends. They love the shade of your money tree, but the second the leaves fall, they treat you like you are contagious. Poverty to these people is not a misfortune. It is a disease. And Andre and Paige were patient zero. It was late afternoon when I saw the car. It wasn't the Range Rover. The bank had repossessed that yesterday. It wasn't the BMW. The leasing company took that this morning. It was a compact rental. A cheap, dented sedan that looked like a tin can on wheels. It was packed so full the suspension was sagging. Suitcases were tied to the roof with bungee cords. Expensive Louis Vuitton bags were shoved against the windows, screaming of a wealth that no longer existed. They drove slowly up my gravel driveway. They had to navigate around the potholes they used to complain about. They had to drive past the piles of scrap metal they used to call eyesores. I didn't get up. I stayed in my rocking chair. I threw a piece of orange peel to judge my Rottweiler, who caught it in midair. The car stopped at the gate. I had locked it again. Not because I was afraid, but because I wanted to set the terms of engagement. The driver door opened. Andre stepped out. He looked 10 years older than he did in the hospital 3 days ago. His designer shirt was wrinkled. He hadn't shaved. His eyes were red and puffy. He walked toward the gate with the shuffle of a broken man. Paige got out of the passenger side. She was wearing sunglasses, probably to hide her eyes, but even the glasses couldn't hide the slump in her shoulders. She wasn't marching today. She was dragging herself. And then the back door opened. Malik stepped out. My heart squeezed. He was wearing his hoodie and jeans, carrying his backpack. He looked exhausted. He looked humiliated. He looked like a soldier who had been forced to march in a losing army. Andre walked up to the chain-link fence. He grabbed the wire with his fingers. "Dad," he called out. His voice was cracked and dry. "Dad, please open the gate." I ate a slice of orange. I chewed slowly. "Why should I—" "Andre," I asked. "The last time you were here, you tried to break it down. The last time I saw you, you tried to steal my liver." I know Andre sobbed. "I know, Dad. I messed up. We messed up. But we have nowhere to go. Nowhere," I asked. "What about the Ritz-Carlton? What about the yacht club? Surely one of your high-class friends has a guest room." "They won't answer," Andre whispered, looking down at his shoes. "Nobody will answer." I stood up then. I walked down the porch steps. I walked slowly, letting the gravel crunch under my boots. I stopped 5 feet from the gate. "So, I am the last resort," I said. "The embarrassing old mechanic is the only one left who will pick up the phone. Is that it?" "Winston, please," Paige spoke up. Her voice was thin, stripped of its usual venom. "We are tired. We have been sleeping in the car for 2 nights. We just need a place to shower. We just need a bed." She put her hand on Malik's shoulder and pushed him forward. It was a subtle move, but I saw it. She was using him. She was using my grandson as a human shield, as a bargaining chip. "Do it for Malik," she said. "He starts Stanford in a month. He can't live in a car, Winston. He needs stability. He is your grandson. You wouldn't turn him away, would you? I looked at Malik. He looked back at me. His eyes were pleading, but not for a bed. He was pleading for me to end this, to stop the madness. I reached into my pocket and pulled out the key to the padlock. I unlocked the chain. It rattled as it fell to the ground. Andre let out a sigh of relief that sounded like a tire deflating. Thank you, Dad. Thank you. I knew you wouldn't abandon us. He reached for the gate to push it open. Stop, I barked. Andre froze. I pushed the gate open just enough for one person to pass through. Malik, I said, get your bag. Come inside. Malik looked at his parents. Then he looked at me. He walked through the gate. I put my hand on his shoulder and pulled him close. He smelled like stale car air and fast food. Go into the house, son, I said gently. There is fresh lemonade in the fridge. Judge will keep you company. Malik nodded. He didn't look back. He walked up the porch steps and disappeared into the safety of my home. I turned back to Andre and Paige. I grabbed the gate and pulled it shut. I snapped the padlock back on. Click. Dad, Andre asked, his voice rising in panic. What are you doing? We need to come in too. I shook my head. Malik is welcome here, I said. Malik is innocent. He is a victim of your ego. But you two, you are not victims. You are the architects of your own disaster. Winston, be reasonable, Paige cried, grabbing the fence. We have no money. We have no home. The bank took everything. They didn't take your hands, I said. They didn't take your backs. You are healthy adults. Get a job. A job, Andre stammered. Dad, I am a marketing executive. Nobody is hiring right now. Then dig ditches, I said. Flip burgers, wash cars, do what I did for 40 years, do what you thought was beneath you. I turned to walk away. No, Dad, please. Andre fell to his knees. He actually fell to his knees in the dirt. My son, the man who wore Italian suits, the man who wouldn't touch a wrench because it was dirty. He was kneeling in the gravel, weeping like a child. Dad, I am begging you, he cried, tears streaming down his face, mixing with the dust. I am sorry. I am so sorry. I was wrong. You were right about everything. Just don't leave us on the street. It is going to rain tonight, please. I stopped. I looked at him. It was a pathetic sight, but it was also a necessary one. He had to break. He had to hit the absolute bottom before he could ever hope to climb back up. I looked at Paige. She wasn't kneeling, but she was crying. Her pride was finally broken. I took a deep breath. I pointed a finger toward the far corner of my property down past the workshop near the line of trees where the mosquitoes swarmed in the evening. There was an old canvas tent set up there. I used to use it for hunting 20 years ago. It was faded green, patched with duct tape, and smelled of mildew. It was sitting on hard, packed dirt. There was a garden hose nearby for water and a portable camping toilet I had dragged out of the shed. You see that? I asked. Andre looked. Paige looked. That is a 1995 Coleman tent, I said. It leaks a little when it rains hard. And the zipper sticks. What? Andre whispered. That is your guest room, I said, my voice hard as steel. Winston, you can't be serious, Paige gasped. You want us to sleep in a tent, like animals. I laughed. It was a short, sharp sound. Animals. No, Paige. Animals know how to build their own homes. You are parasites. You are and parasites take what they can get. I walked closer to the fence, looking down at my son. You wanted to live on my land, I said. You wanted to inherit my estate. Well, here it is. Welcome to the Collier estate. The rent is free. The food is whatever you can buy with the change in your pocket. And the bathroom is that blue bucket over there. Dad, Andre moaned. Please. The house is right there. Just let us sleep on the floor. No, I said. The house is for family. The house is for people who respect the name Collier. You lost that right when you forged my signature. You lost that right when you lied to my grandson. I pointed at the tent again. That is your level now, I said. That is the lifestyle you can afford. It is time you learned what it feels like to start from zero. I turned my back on them. Go set up your camp, I said over my shoulder. And Andre, don't make too much noise. I sleep early, and if I catch you near the main house, I will turn the sprinklers on. I walked up the steps to my porch. I heard the sound of the zipper on a Louis Vuitton bag being dragged through the gravel. I heard Paige sobbing softly. I heard Andre struggling to stand up. I walked into the house where Malik was drinking lemonade. "Is it done, Grandpa?" he asked. I looked out the window. I saw two figures dragging their expensive suitcases toward the ragged tent in the twilight. "It is just beginning, son," I said. I sat down in my chair. Tonight they would sleep on the hard ground. Tonight they would feel the cold. Tonight they would realize that a Rolex watch can't keep you warm and a Gucci bag can't keep the rain off your head. Gravity had finally done its work. They had landed. Now let us see if they could survive the impact. The first night in the tent broke their spirits, but the second night broke their backs. I watched from my kitchen window as the sun came up over the Georgia pines. The canvas of the old Coleman tent was sagging heavy with the morning dew. It was humid already, the kind of sticky southern heat that clings to your skin the moment you step outside. I sipped my coffee black and hot. Inside my house, the air conditioning was humming a soft lullaby. Malik was asleep in the guest room, wrapped in clean cotton sheets. Outside, his parents were waking up on the hard-packed dirt. I saw the tent flap unzip. Andre crawled out first. He looked like a man who had gone 10 rounds with a heavyweight boxer. His designer polo shirt was stained with sweat and dirt. His hair, usually gelled to perfection, was sticking up in wild tufts. He stood up and groaned, clutching his lower back. The ground does not forgive you when you have spent 40 years sleeping on orthopedic mattresses. Then Paige emerged. If Andre looked bad, Paige looked like a tragedy. Her silk pajamas were ruined. She had bug bites on her arms. Her mascara had run down her face during the night, leaving black streaks that made her look like a weeping raccoon. She looked around the yard, blinking in the harsh sunlight. She looked at the main house where she knew there were hot showers and soft towels. Then she looked at the green garden hose coiled by the spigot near the shed. I walked out onto the porch. Judge, my Rottweiler, trotted out with me and sat at the top of the steps. "Good morning, campers," I called out. Andre flinched. Paige just glared at me with pure hatred. "Dad," Andre croaked. His voice was raspy. "Dad, please. It was freezing last night. The zipper broke. The mosquitoes ate us alive. Can we just come in for 10 minutes, just to use the bathroom, just to wash our faces?" I took a sip of coffee. "The bathroom is over there, son," I said, pointing to the blue camping toilet in the corner of the yard. "And the shower is right next to you." I pointed to the hose. "Winston, you are a monster!" Paige screamed. Her voice was thin and hysterical. "I am not washing myself with a hose like a dog. I have sensitive skin. I need hot water." "Then you better start running in place, Paige," I said. "Friction creates heat." I turned to Andre. "Breakfast is in 20 minutes, I said. "But in this house, we don't eat for free. If you want food, you have to earn it." "Earn it?" Andre asked, rubbing his eyes. How I walked down the steps. I threw a pair of coveralls at his feet. They were old, stained with grease, and smelled of hard work. "Put these on," I said. "Meet me in the shop." "I don't know how to fix cars, Dad." Andre whined. "I know," I said. "That is why you are not fixing them. You are cleaning up after the men who do." 10 minutes later, Andre walked into the shop. He was wearing the coveralls. They were too short for him, riding up at the ankles. He looked ridiculous, but he also looked hungry. "Here is your tool, son," I said. I handed him a toilet brush and a bucket of bleach water. "The employee bathroom hasn't been scrubbed in a week," I said. "And after that, the floor in Bay 3 has a hydraulic leak. I want it mopped until I can eat off it." Andre looked at the toilet brush. He looked at it like it was a radioactive isotope. "Dad, I have an MBA," he whispered. "I managed a marketing team of 50 people, and now you are managing a bucket of bleach," I said. "Dignity isn't in the title, Andre. Dignity is in the job well done. Now get to work." I sat on my stool and watched him. It was painful. I admit it. Watching my own son, the boy I had dreamed such big things for, on his knees scrubbing a toilet bowl. He was gagging from the smell. He was clumsy, knocking over the bucket twice. His soft, uncalloused hands were turning red from the harsh chemicals. But I didn't stop him. I didn't offer to help. 20 years ago, I made the mistake of hiring a maid so Andre wouldn't have to do chores. I made the mistake of buying him a car so he wouldn't have to take the bus. I thought I was giving him a better life, but I was crippling him. I was stealing his struggle. And a man without struggle is a man without substance. I was not punishing him. I was reparenting him. 40 years too late. By noon, Andre was exhausted. He was sweating profusely. He had grease on his face and bleach spots on his expensive loafers, which he hadn't bothered to take off. He walked over to me. He was trembling. "I am done, Dad," he said. "Can I eat now?" I inspected the floor. It wasn't perfect. There were streaks, but he had done it. I reached into the mini fridge and pulled out a paper bag. Inside was a bologna sandwich and an apple. I handed it to him. Andre tore into the sandwich like a starving wolf. He didn't complain that it wasn't organic. He didn't ask for Grey Poupon. He ate the cheap processed meat and the white bread like it was filet mignon. "Tastes good?" I asked. He nodded his mouth full. "That is the taste of labor, son," I said. "Food always tastes better when you bought it with your own sweat." While Andre was eating, I looked at the security monitor mounted under my workbench. I had been keeping an eye on the yard. Paige had refused to work. She spent the morning sitting on a log, filing her nails and muttering to herself. But now she was moving. She saw that I was in the back of the shop with Andre. She saw that Malik was in the house reading. She stood up. She looked around furtively like a cat checking for dogs. She walked toward the shop. But she didn't come to the main bay doors where we were. She went around the side to the office entrance. The office door was unlocked. I left it unlocked on purpose. I watched on the screen as she slipped inside. My office is a small room cluttered with filing cabinets and stacks of manuals. It smells of old paper and tobacco. In the corner sits a large, heavy steel safe. It is an old model from the 50s, the kind bank robbers use to blow up in movies. Paige didn't look at the manuals. She went straight for the desk. She started opening drawers. She was frantic. Her hands were shaking as she rifled through my invoices, my tax returns, my parts orders. She was looking for something specific. She was looking for the money. She thought I was hiding millions. She thought I was a miser hoarding gold while they suffered. I watched her face on the grainy black and white screen. She looked desperate. Her eyes were wide, darting back and forth. Then she found it. I had left a folder on top of the desk. It was labeled Confidential, Blackwood Development. It was the contract I had signed with the developer Thomas Blackwood at the steakhouse, the joint venture agreement. Paige opened the folder. I saw her freeze. I saw her lean in closer. She was reading the numbers. Sale agreement, $10 million. Transfer of deed. Her hands started to shake uncontrollably. But this time it wasn't from fear. It was from excitement. It was the shake of an addict finding a vein. $10 million, she whispered. I could read her lips on the screen. She flipped to the back page. She saw my signature. She saw Blackwood's signature. She looked around the room. Her eyes landed on the steel safe in the corner. She put the pieces together in her twisted mind. She thought I had sold the land outright. She thought the deal was done. And because I didn't trust banks, she assumed the cash, the whole $10 million, or at least a big chunk of it, was sitting inside that iron box right now. A slow, terrifying smile spread across her face. It transformed her. She didn't look like the broken woman who had slept in a tent. She looked like a predator who had just found a wounded gazelle. She carefully closed the folder. She put it back exactly where she found it. She didn't steal it. She was too smart for that. If she took it, I would know. She backed out of the office. She slipped out the side door. I watched her walk back to the tent. She sat down on the log again. She picked up her nail file. But her body language had changed. She wasn't slumped over anymore. She was sitting straight. She was humming. I looked at Andre, who was finishing his apple core and all. He didn't know. He didn't know his wife had just found the map to the treasure. I felt a coldness in my gut. I had set the trap, but seeing her walk into it, seeing the raw, naked greed on her face made me sick. She wasn't going to use that money to help Andre. She wasn't going to use it to send Malik to college. She was going to take it and run. I knew what was coming next. She couldn't open that safe. She didn't know the combination, but she knew someone who could break things, or at least she knew someone she could manipulate into breaking things. Andre stood up, wiping crumbs from his mouth. "What do I do next, Dad?" he asked. I looked at him. I looked at the man who was slowly relearning how to be human. And I looked at the monitor where his wife was plotting his destruction. "Go clean the gutters, son," I said. "And Andre." "Yeah, Dad." "Watch your back," I said quietly. "The snakes are coming out of the grass." Andre looked confused, but he nodded and walked out to find the ladder. I sat there alone in the shop. I looked at the safe in the office. There was no money in there. Just a pile of old love letters from Rose and a broken pocket watch. But Paige didn't know that. Tonight she would make her move. Tonight she would prove exactly who she was. and I would be waiting. The moon was hidden behind a thick blanket of clouds, making the night air heavy and suffocating. It was the kind of darkness that felt physical, like a blindfold tied tight around your eyes. I sat in my office in the corner chair that was draped in shadows. I did not turn on the lamp. I did not turn on the fan. I sat perfectly still with my hands resting on the cold steel of my Mossberg 500 shotgun which lay across my lap. I was not hunting a deer. I was not hunting a thief in the night. I was hunting the last shred of hope I held for my son. I watched the security monitor. The screen glowed with a faint, ghostly green light. I saw the tent in the backyard. It was vibrating. I could not hear them from here, but I knew what they were saying. I knew the poison Paige was dripping into Andre's ear. $10 million, Andre. It is right there. It is our money. He stole it from you by hiding it. He wants us to suffer. I saw the tent flap unzip. 2 figures emerged. They moved with the jerky, nervous energy of amateurs. Paige was leading. She was wearing dark clothes, moving in a crouch that looked ridiculous, like a bad spy movie. Andre followed her. He stopped twice, looking back at the main house, looking back at where his son Malik was sleeping peacefully. He hesitated. I saw him shake his head. I saw him pull his hand away when Paige tried to grab it. "Turn back, son," I whispered to the empty room. "Turn back. Go back to the tent. Go to sleep. Wake up tomorrow and scrub the floors again. Redeem yourself." But gravity is strong, and the gravity of a manipulative woman and a mountain of debt is stronger than a man's conscience. Paige whispered something to him. She pointed at the office window. She probably reminded him of the humiliation, of the toilet brush, of the foreclosure. Andre slumped. His shoulders dropped. He nodded. They moved toward the office door. I had left it unlocked. I wanted there to be no barrier. I wanted this to be a choice, not a challenge. The door handle turned slowly. It squeaked, a sound that tore through my heart. They slipped inside. I was sitting 10 feet away, deep in the corner behind a stack of filing cabinets. They did not see me. Their eyes were adjusted to the dark outside, and the office was pitch black. Paige turned on a small flashlight. She kept the beam low, aimed at the floor. "There it is," she hissed. The beam swept across the room and landed on the safe. The heavy iron box sat there silent and imposing. "Hurry," Paige whispered. "Drill the lock, just like you watched on the video." Andre fumbled with the canvas bag he was carrying. He pulled out my cordless drill. He pulled out a high-speed cobalt bit. He knelt in front of the safe. I watched my son. I watched the hands I had held when they were tiny and soft, now gripping a tool to rob me. He was sweating. I could smell it, the sour, pungent scent of fear. "I can't do this, Paige," he whispered. His voice was trembling. "This is Dad's safe. What if he wakes up? What if he comes in?" "He won't wake up," Paige snapped, holding the light steady. "He is old. He sleeps like the dead. And even if he does come in, what is he going to do? He is 71, Andre. You can take him." Andre flinched. "Take him? You mean fight him?" "I mean do what is necessary," Paige said, her voice cold as ice. "We are taking what is ours. That contract said $10 million, Andre. Do you know what we can do with $10 million? We can leave. We can go to Europe. We can forget this miserable tent and this miserable old man. Now drill." Andre placed the drill bit against the keyhole. He pulled the trigger. The high-pitched whine of the drill filled the room. It sounded like a scream, metal grinding against metal. I closed my eyes. Every revolution of that drill bit was severing a tie. The tie of fatherhood, the tie of trust, the tie of blood. He drilled for 5 minutes. He pushed hard, leaning his body weight into it. He was sweating profuse amounts, now drops falling onto the floor. "Got it," he gasped. The pin dropped. He grabbed the handle of the safe. He pulled. The heavy door creaked open. Paige gasped. She shoved Andre out of the way. She dropped to her knees in front of the open safe. She shone the flashlight inside, eager to see the stacks of cash, eager to see the bearer bonds, the gold bars, whatever fantasy she had concocted in her greedy mind. "Give it to me," she whispered, reaching inside. She pulled out the contents. It was not money. It was a small wooden box and a folded pile of fabric. She opened the box. She dumped it onto the floor. Paper fluttered down, old yellowed envelopes, photographs with curled edges, a dried pressed rose that crumbled into dust as it hit the carpet. "What is this?" Paige hissed, scrabbling through the papers. Where's the money? Where's the cash? She grabbed the pile of fabric. She shook it out. It was a pair of blue coveralls, tiny ones, size 4T, with the name Andre stitched in red thread on the pocket. It was the first uniform I had made for him when he was a toddler so he could look like his daddy. She threw the coveralls on the ground. She kicked them. "It is empty," she screamed, forgetting to whisper. "It is just trash. Old letters, garbage." Andre picked up one of the letters. He shone the light on it. "It is Mom's handwriting," he whispered. He read the date, June 12th, 1982. "My dearest Winston." The letter read, "Thank you for working the extra shifts. I know you are tired. But when I look at our baby boy sleeping in his crib, I know it is worth it. You are building a world for him. You are the strongest man I know." Andre started to cry, a soft choking sound. He lied. Paige shrieked, standing up and kicking the safe door. "He lied about the contract. He tricked us. That evil, senile old bastard." She spun around, looking for something to break. "Turn on the lights, Andre," she ordered. "I am going to tear this office apart. If the money isn't in the safe, it is under the floorboards. It is in the walls. Find it." Andre didn't move. He was clutching the letter to his chest. "I said turn on the lights," Paige yelled. "You don't have to," I said. My voice came from the darkness, deep and resonant. Paige froze. Andre dropped the flashlight. It rolled across the floor, casting wild, spinning shadows before coming to rest against my boot. I reached up and pulled the chain on the desk lamp. Click. The room flooded with yellow light. I was sitting in the armchair 10 feet away. I was wearing my best suit, the one I bought with the tuition money. I wanted to look dignified for this. And across my knees lay the shotgun. Black matte steel, loaded. Dad Andre breathed. He fell back against the safe, sliding down until he hit the floor. Winston Paige gasped. She backed up until she hit the desk. She looked at the gun, then at my face. Her eyes were wide with terror. I didn't raise the gun. I didn't need to. The presence of it was enough. "You were looking for the treasure," I said calmly. I looked at the mess on the floor, the letters from my dead wife, the tiny coveralls I had saved for 40 years, hoping to give them to my grandson one day. "You found it," I said. Winston put the gun down. Paige stammered, holding her hands up. We thought we heard a noise. We were checking on the security." "Stop," I barked. "Don't insult me, Paige. Not now. Not when you are standing over the wreckage of my life." I looked at Andre. He couldn't look at me. He was staring at the letter in his hand, tears dripping onto the ink. "You thought there was $10 million in there," I said. "Because you saw the contract. Because you are a thief and a spy, Paige." I stood up slowly, gripping the shotgun in one hand. "There is no cash," I said. "The deal with Blackwood is real, but the money is in a trust for Malik, a trust you can never touch." I pointed the barrel of the gun at the floor near the safe. That safe contained the only things that actually mattered to me. Your mother's love letters, Andre. The proof that we struggled, the proof that we loved you, and you drilled through it like it was an obstacle. "You threw it on the floor like garbage, Dad?" "I didn't know," Andre sobbed. "I didn't know." "You didn't know because you never asked," I said. "You never asked about us. You only asked for money. You only asked for things. And when I had nothing left to give you, tried to take it by force." I reached for the phone on the desk. "Winston." "Wait," Paige cried, taking a step forward. "What are you doing?" I picked up the receiver. I dialed 3 numbers. 911. "Don't," Andre yelled, scrambling to his knees. "Dad, please. I am your son. You can't send me to jail. It will ruin me." "You are already ruined, Andre," I said, listening to the line ring. "Jail is just a change of address." "Hello?" the operator answered. 911. "What is your emergency?" "My name is Winston Collier." I said, my eyes locked on my son. "I live at 1500 Old Oak Road. I have intruders in my home. They have broken into my safe." "Are you in danger, sir?" the operator asked. "Yes," I said. "I am holding them at gunpoint. Please send the police." I hung up. "Winston, no," Paige screamed. She ran toward me. I pumped the shotgun. Chick-chick. The sound was loud, violent, and final. Paige froze in her tracks. She looked down the barrel of the gun. She saw the darkness inside. "Sit down," I ordered. She collapsed onto the floor next to Andre. "Dad." Andre whispered. Why? Why are you doing this? I looked at the tiny blue coveralls on the floor. The red thread was faded, but I could still read the name. Because I loved the boy who wore those clothes, I said, my voice breaking for the first time. I loved him more than my own life. But that boy is dead, Andre. You killed him. You killed him the day you let this woman call me a mongrel. You killed him tonight when you picked up that drill. I sat back down in the chair, keeping the gun trained on them. I am not your father anymore, I said. I am just the victim of a robbery, and you are just the criminals who got caught. We sat in silence. The only sound in the room was Andre's weeping and the distant wail of sirens getting closer and closer, coming to take my family away. The red and blue lights of the police cruisers strobed against the walls of my living room, turning the family photos into a flickering horror movie. I sat in my armchair, the shotgun resting on my knees, unloaded, now waiting. The officers came in with their guns drawn, shouting commands, but I did not flinch. I just pointed a tired finger toward the corner where my son and his wife were huddled on the floor, sobbing. Get on the ground, the officer screamed. Hands behind your back, I watched as they manhandled Andre. They grabbed his wrists that had never done a day of hard labor, and twisted them behind his back. The sound of the handcuffs ratcheting shut was loud and metallic. Click, click, click. Dad Andre screamed as they hauled him up. His face was pressed against the carpet and snot was running from his nose. Dad, tell them. Tell them it is a mistake. I am your son. I live here. I stood up slowly. I handed my shotgun to the lead officer, a man I had known for 20 years named Sergeant Miller. It is no mistake, Sergeant, I said, my voice flat. They broke into my safe. They destroyed my property. But I am his son, Andre wailed as they dragged him toward the door. You cannot arrest your own son. I looked at him. I looked at the man who had stood by while his wife called me a mongrel. I looked at the man who had lied to my grandson. I do not have a son, I said. Not anymore. They dragged them out into the night. Paige was screaming threats about lawsuits, about knowing the mayor, about ruining everyone in that room. But the police did not care. To them, she was just another criminal caught in the act. I watched the squad cars pull away. The silence that followed was heavy. It was the silence of a house that had just been purged. I did not go to sleep. I sat in the dark for 2 hours drinking coffee. Then I put on my hat and drove to the county jail. The holding area smelled of pine sol and stale sweat. It is a smell that strips away your dignity the moment you walk through the door. I sat on a metal stool on one side of the thick plexiglass. A few minutes later, the door on the other side buzzed open. They brought them in. Both of them. They were still wearing their dark clothes from the robbery, but now they looked small. Andre was shaking uncontrollably. Paige looked furious, her makeup smeared, her eyes darting around the room like a trapped animal. They sat down. They were cuffed to the table. Dad Andre whispered, leaning toward the glass. Thank God you came. You have to drop the charges. This is insanity. I am looking at 5 years, Dad. Burglary. Attempted grand larceny. You have to stop this. I placed a manila envelope on the table. I did not open it. I just let it sit there between us. You broke into my home, Andre, I said. You drilled my safe. You desecrated your mother's letters. That is not a misunderstanding. That is a felony. We were desperate, Paige hissed. She was not begging yet. She was still trying to justify it. You pushed us to this, Winston. You hid the money. You made us live in a tent. What did you expect? I expected you to be human beings, I said. But I was wrong. I looked at Andre. He was crying again. He was always crying lately. Dad, please, he sobbed. I am your flesh and blood. You held me when I was a baby. You cannot send me to prison. I will die in there. I looked at him. I really looked at him. I tried to find the little boy who used to follow me around the shop. I tried to find the young man I sent to college, but they were gone. All that was left was this hollow shell of a man filled with greed and fear. You keep saying you are my son, I said, my voice low and vibrating with a pain I had suppressed for years. You use that word like a shield, like a get-out-of-jail-free card. I leaned closer to the glass. But my son is dead, I said. Andre flinched as if I had slapped him. What? My son died a long time ago, I said. He died the day he stood in my living room and watched his wife call his father a mongrel and did nothing. He died the day he lied to his own child about a graduation party because he was ashamed of my grease-stained hands. I pointed at him. You are not my son. You are just a thief. You are a stranger who shares my last name, and strangers go to jail when they rob me. Andre put his head on the table and wailed. It was a guttural sound of total defeat. Paige, however, was calculating. She looked at the envelope on the table. She realized that I had not come just to lecture them. I had come to make a deal. What is in the envelope, Winston? She asked, her voice hard. I tapped the paper. Freedom, I said. They both looked up. I am willing to drop the charges, I said. I will tell the district attorney that this was a domestic dispute that got out of hand. I will refuse to testify. Without my testimony, the case falls apart. You will walk out of here tonight. Oh, thank God. Andre breathed, sitting up. Thank you, Dad. I knew you loved me. I knew it. I held up a hand. But there is a price, I said. I opened the envelope and slid 2 documents against the glass. This is a legal agreement drawn up by my lawyer an hour ago. It has 2 conditions. I pointed to the first paragraph. Number 1, you sign a full and permanent restraining order against me and Malik. You relinquish all parental rights and guardianship over Malik effective immediately. He is 18 next month, but this document ensures you have no legal claim to him, to his trust fund, or to his future. You will never contact him again unless he reaches out to you first. Andre gasped. You want us to disown our son? You already disowned him, I snapped, when you tried to steal his tuition money. When you used him as a shield to get into my house, he chooses me, Andre. He chooses the mechanic. This paper just makes it legal. And the second condition, Paige asked. She did not care about Malik. She only cared about the catch. I pointed to the second paragraph. Number 2, you leave Georgia. You leave this state and you never come back. If I see your face in Atlanta again, if I see your car near my property, I will reinstitute the charges and I will add the environmental fraud you committed against my shop to the list. I will bury you under so many lawsuits, you will never see the sun again. Exile, Andre whispered. You are banishing us. I am removing the cancer, I said. I looked at the clock on the wall. You have 5 minutes, I said. Sign the papers and walk away with nothing but the clothes on your back. Or don't sign them and go back to your cell. The arraignment is in the morning. I hear the judge is very tough on elder abuse cases. Andre looked at the paper. He looked at me. His hands were shaking so bad the handcuffs rattled against the table. Dad, I can't leave. This is my home. My friends are here. Your friends abandoned you, I said. You have no home, Andre. You have no job. You have no money. You burned it all down. I can't sign away my son. He wept. I can't do it. Then enjoy prison, I said, starting to stand up. Wait. It was Paige. She grabbed the pen that the guard had left on the table. She shoved the document toward Andre. Sign it, she hissed. Paige. Andre looked at her shocked. That is Malik. That is our boy. He is gone. Andre, Paige snapped. Can't you see that he hates us? He is with him now. If we go to jail, we lose him anyway. At least this way we are free. She looked at me with eyes full of pure, cold survival instinct. We will go to Florida, she said. My sister lives in Tampa. We can start over. Sign the paper, Andre, she ordered. Andre looked at the pen. He looked at the glass partition separating him from the father he had betrayed. He looked at the future, which was narrowing down to a single terrifying choice. He picked up the pen. He cried as he wrote. Tears splashed onto the legal document, smearing the ink. He signed his name. Then he signed the second page. Paige snatched the pen and signed her name with a flourish. She didn't hesitate. She didn't cry. To her, it was just a transaction. Freedom for a son she never really understood anyway. I took the papers. I checked the signatures. Guard, I called out. The guard opened the door. They are free to go, I said. I am dropping the complaint. The guard unlocked their cuffs. Andre stood up, rubbing his wrists. He looked at me one last time. Dad? He started. Don't, I said. Don't call me that. I put the papers in my briefcase. You have 1 hour to get off my land, I said. Take your tent, take your bags, and go. I turned and walked out of the visiting room. I waited in the parking lot. I watched them walk out of the jail exit. It was raining now, a light, cold drizzle. They stood on the sidewalk shivering. They had no car. Their rental had been impounded. They had no money. I rolled down my window. "Here," I said, throwing a small bundle onto the wet pavement. It was a bus schedule and 2 tickets to Tampa. One way. Andre picked them up. He looked at me. He looked smaller than I had ever seen him. He looked like a ghost. "Goodbye, Andre," I said. I rolled up the window. I put the truck in gear and drove away. I watched them in the rearview mirror. 2 small figures standing under a street lamp alone in the rain. They had wanted to be high class. They had wanted to be superior. Now they were just refugees of their own ego. I drove home. The house was quiet. I walked into the guest room. Malik was asleep. He was safe. I sat on the edge of the bed and watched him breathe. I had lost a son tonight. I had cut off my own arm to save the body. It hurt. God, it hurt. But as I looked at Malik sleeping peacefully without the weight of his parents' lies pressing down on him, I knew I had made the right choice. The toxicity was gone. The parasites were gone. It was just us now, the mechanic and the scholar. And we had a lot of work to do. The silence in my house over the last month had been different. Before, it was the silence of loneliness, the quiet of an old man waiting to die in a workshop full of memories. But for the last 30 days, it was the silence of peace. It was the sound of a house that had been purged of a sickness. Andre and Paige were gone. They were somewhere in Florida, living in a motel room, trying to figure out how to survive in a world that did not care about their leased cars or their designer bags. I did not miss them. God help me, I did not miss my own son. I missed the idea of him. I missed the little boy who used to fish with me. But the man he became, that man was a stranger, and I was glad he was gone. It was a Tuesday morning in August. The Georgia heat was breaking just a little, hinting at the autumn to come. I sat at the kitchen table watching Malik pack his final bag. He was leaving tomorrow. Stanford, California. A whole new world. He looked older. The last month had changed him. He walked taller. He spoke less but said more. The trauma of his parents' betrayal had scarred him. Yes, but scars are just skin that is tougher than it used to be. "Put on your good shirt, son," I said, sipping my coffee. "We have one stop to make before you leave." Malik looked up from his suitcase. He was folding his hoodies with military precision. "Where are we going, Grandpa?" "The airport isn't until tomorrow. We are going to the bank," I said. Malik frowned. "Grandpa, I have the scholarship money, and I have the cash you gave me from the shop safe. I don't need anything else." I stood up and put on my suit jacket. It was the same suit I bought to spite Andre. It still fit perfectly. "This isn't about what you need, Malik," I said. "This is about what you are going to carry." We drove downtown in my truck. I parked in the garage of the tallest skyscraper in Atlanta. This was not the branch where I cashed my Social Security checks. This was the corporate headquarters of First National. The kind of place where the floors are marble and the air smells like old money. We took the elevator to the penthouse floor. A receptionist who looked like a fashion model greeted us. "Mr. Collier," she said, smiling warmly. "Mr. Sterling is expecting you." Malik looked at me confused. He tugged at his collar. "Grandpa, why are we here? This place looks expensive." "Just walk, son," I said. "Head high. You belong here just as much as anyone else." We walked into a corner office that overlooked the entire city. Mr. Sterling was waiting. He was my estate attorney, a man I had trusted for 30 years. He was the one who helped me draw up the eviction notices. He was the one who helped me execute the master plan. "Winston." "Good to see you," Sterling said, shaking my hand. "And this must be Malik, the scholar." Malik shook his hand nervously. "Sit down, gentlemen," Sterling said, gesturing to the leather chairs. He opened a thick leather binder on his desk. He looked at me, then at Malik. Malik Sterling began. "Your grandfather has done some restructuring of his assets over the last few weeks. He wanted to explain it to you before you left for California." Malik looked at me. "Is this about the shop, Grandpa? Did you sell it?" I leaned forward. "Do you remember when your mother found that contract in my office?" I asked. "The one with Thomas Blackwood, the developer. She thought I sold the land for $10 million. Malik nodded. "She said you sold out. She said you were hoarding the cash." "She was half right," I said. "I did sign a deal with Blackwood, but I didn't sell the land, Malik." "I would never sell the land. That dirt has your grandmother's sweat in it." I tapped the binder. "I contributed the land to a joint venture," I explained. "Blackwood puts up the money to build the condos. I put up the land. But I didn't take cash. I took equity. I own 51% of the project." Malik looked confused. He was smart, but he was 18. Real estate law was a foreign language. "What does that mean?" he asked. Sterling smiled. "It means, Malik, that your grandfather didn't just sell the farm. He became the landlord. The project is valued at $30 million upon completion. Your grandfather's share, the Collier share, is currently valued at $15 million. Malik's jaw dropped. He stared at me. "15 million," he whispered. "Grandpa, you are a millionaire?" I shrugged. "On paper, son. It is just numbers on a screen. But yes, the land is working for us now." Sterling turned the page of the binder. "And that brings us to the purpose of this meeting," Sterling said. "Winston has created an irrevocable trust, the Collier family trust." He pushed the document toward Malik. "Read the beneficiary lines, son," I said. Malik looked at the paper. His eyes widened. "Beneficiary Malik Andre Collier." He looked up at me, panic in his eyes. "Grandpa, where are Mom and Dad's names?" I sat back in my chair. "They aren't there, Malik." "But they are your son. They are your family." I looked out the window at the sprawling city below. "They made their choice," I said, my voice hard. "They chose quick money over loyalty. They chose to rob me. They chose to lie to you. When they signed those papers at the jail, they legally removed themselves from this family. They get nothing, not a dime. Not now, not ever." Malik looked down at the paper. He looked terrified. $15 million, he whispered. "Grandpa, I don't want this. It is too much. I am just a kid. I know," I said. "And that is why you don't get it yet." I nodded to Sterling. "Explain the conditions," I said. Sterling cleared his throat. "The trust is locked, Malik. You cannot touch the principal. You cannot buy a Ferrari. You cannot buy a mansion. The trust will pay for your education at Stanford, full tuition room board, and a modest living stipend." He turned the page. "However, upon your graduation, there are conditions for the release of the remaining funds." "Conditions?" Malik asked. I leaned forward, resting my elbows on the mahogany desk. "Condition number 1, I said. You must graduate. I don't care if it takes 4 years or 6, but you finish what you start. No dropping out to find yourself. You find yourself in the library." Malik nodded. "I will. I promise." "Condition number 2, I continued. And this is the big one. After you graduate, you cannot access the money for 2 years. 2 years? Yes, in those 2 years you must work, and not at a hedge fund. Not at a marketing firm like your father. You must work in service, the Peace Corps, teach for America, or come back here and run the community center we are building. You have to spend 2 years helping people who have nothing." "Why?" Malik asked softly. "Because," I said, looking him dead in the eye, "wealth is a poison, Malik. It poisoned your father. He thought money made him better than other people. He thought it made him special. I want you to learn that money is just a tool. It is a hammer. You can use it to build a house, or you can use it to break a window. Before I hand you the hammer, I need to know you won't smash your own life with it." I pointed at his chest. "I want you to see poverty," I said. "Real poverty, not the kind your parents pretended to have in that tent. I want you to see people who work 3 jobs to feed their kids. I want you to understand the value of $1 before you get 15 million of them." Malik sat there in silence. He was processing it. Most kids his age would be angry. They would want the Lamborghini now. But Malik was a Collier. He was my grandson. He looked at the papers. He took a deep breath. "I accept," he said. He picked up the pen. "I will make you proud, Grandpa. I won't turn into them." "I know you won't," I said. He signed the document. We walked out of the bank an hour later. Malik was quiet on the ride home. He was carrying a heavy weight now, the weight of legacy. When we pulled into the driveway of the shop, the sun was setting. The orange light hit the tin roof, making it glow. I parked the truck. "You hungry?" I asked. "I can make some chili." Malik smiled. "Your chili is the best." We walked up the porch steps. Judge was barking, greeting us. But then I stopped. Lying on the doormat right in front of the door was a thick envelope. It wasn't a bill. It wasn't a flyer. It was a courier packet. Heavy. Official. My stomach tightened. I knew that shape. I knew that color. I picked it up. The return address was a law firm I didn't recognize. Salinger and Associates. I ripped it open. I pulled out the letter. "Dear Mr. Collier, we represent Mrs. Paige Collier and Mr. Andre Collier in the matter of the estate of Winston Collier." I laughed. A bitter, dry sound. The estate, I wasn't even dead yet. I read on. Our clients allege that the documents signed on July 14th at the Fulton County Jail were obtained under duress and coercion. Furthermore, we are in possession of evidence suggesting that Mr. Winston Collier was suffering from diminished capacity and undue influence at the time of said signing. I felt a vain throb in my temple. Diminished capacity. They were back to that. Therefore, we are filing a motion to void the restraining order and the relinquishment of parental rights. Additionally, we are filing a civil suit for constructive trust, claiming that the assets held in the Collier Family Trust are the rightful inheritance of Mr. Andre Collier by virtue of lineage. I looked at the bottom of the page. We demand an immediate freeze of all assets pending litigation. If you do not respond within 48 hours, we will seek a court order. I lowered the letter. Malik looked at me. His face went pale. What is it, Grandpa? Is it them? I looked at the gate. I had locked it. But locks only keep out honest people. Lawyers are not honest people. They found a shark, I said quietly. They found some ambulance chaser who is willing to fight dirty for a cut of the money. Are they coming back? Malik whispered. I crumpled the letter in my fist. They are trying, I said. They heard about the money, Malik. Somehow they found out about the deal with Blackwood. Maybe Paige was spying on us. Maybe she hired an investigator. I looked at my grandson. He was supposed to leave for Stanford tomorrow. He was supposed to be safe, but the past has a way of clawing its way out of the grave. I put my arm around him. Go inside, son, I said. Pack your chili. What are you going to do? I looked at the setting sun. The sky was turning the color of a bruise. I am going to call Mr. Sterling, I said, and then I am going to clean my shotgun, because this isn't a legal battle anymore. This is a siege. And if they want to come for my grandson's future, they are going to have to walk through hell to get it. The courtroom was cold, colder than the tent my son had slept in, and colder than the jail cell where I had left him a month ago. The air conditioning hummed with a low mechanical drone that did nothing to mask the smell of desperation coming from the plaintiff's table. I sat alone at the defendant's table. I did not hire a lawyer. Mr. Sterling, my estate attorney, had offered to represent me, but I told him no. A lawyer speaks the language of statutes and loopholes. Today I needed to speak the language of truth. And the truth is, a language best spoken by the man who lived it. Across the aisle sat Andre and Paige. They looked terrible. Paige was wearing a suit that used to look expensive but now looked tired just like her. Her eyes were rimmed with red and she kept checking her phone under the table. I knew why. My sources told me she had gone to a payday lender, a shark. She had borrowed $50,000 at 60% interest to pay the retainer for the man sitting next to her. Mr. Salinger was his name. He was a man with a shiny suit and a smile that looked like a bear trap. He was working on contingency plus the retainer. He smelled the $15 million in the trust, and he wanted his bite. Judge Blackwell entered the room. He was a no-nonsense man with gray hair and a face carved out of granite. He looked at the paperwork. He looked at me, sitting alone. Mr. Collier, the judge said, you are representing yourself in a civil suit involving millions of dollars. Are you sure you wish to proceed without counsel? I stood up. I buttoned my jacket. I am sure, Your Honor, I said. I don't need a translator to tell my story. Very well, the judge said. Mr. Salinger, call your first witness. Salinger stood up. He walked around the courtroom like he owned it. He called Andre to the stand. Andre walked up. He didn't look at me. He looked at the floor. He looked at the ceiling. He looked anywhere but at the father he was trying to rob for the second time. Mr. Collier Salinger began, his voice smooth as syrup. Please tell the court about your relationship with the defendant. He is my father, Andre whispered. And did you live at the property at 1500 Old Oak Road? Yes. My whole life. Until recently. Salinger nodded. And during those 40 years, did you contribute to the maintenance of the property? Did you help the business grow? Andre hesitated. He looked at Paige. She glared at him, her eyes wide and threatening. Yes, Andre lied. I helped in the shop. I managed the books. I consulted on marketing. Salinger turned to the judge. Your Honor. The plaintiff asserts that the assets in the Collier Trust were formed during the time his son lived and worked on the property. This constitutes a constructive trust. Andre Collier invested his sweat equity into that land. Therefore, he is entitled to 50% of the valuation. This isn't just an inheritance case. It is a partnership dispute. It was a clever lie. If they could prove Andre helped build the business, they could claim he owned half of it. Salinger sat down looking smug. "Mr. Collier," the judge said to me, "you may cross-examine." I stood up. I picked up a cardboard box I had brought with me. It was an old banker's box taped at the corners. I walked to the witness stand. I placed the box on the railing in front of Andre. "Open it," I said. Andre looked at the judge. The judge nodded. Andre opened the box. Inside were receipts. Thousands of them. Some were yellowed with age, some were fresh. "Pick one," I said. "Any one." Andre pulled out a piece of paper. "Read it," I said. "It is a credit card statement," Andre said. "From 2005. "Read the charges," I said. Andre swallowed hard. "Lease payment, BMW 3 Series, $500. Dinner at Chop's Lobster Bar, $300. Suit tailoring, $200. "Who paid that bill, Andre?" I asked. "You did, Dad," he whispered. I nodded. "Reach deeper. Find a receipt for a hammer. Find a receipt for a single gallon of paint. Find one piece of paper that shows you bought anything to improve my property." Andre dug through the box. He found tuition bills. He found car insurance payments. He found bail money from when he got a DUI in college. He found receipts for the vacations he took with Paige. "There is nothing here," he said, his voice trembling. "Correct," I said, turning to the judge. "Your Honor, my son claims he invested in the property. The truth is he was a liability, not an asset. I paid for his clothes. I paid for his education. I paid for his mistakes. He didn't build the roof, Your Honor. He just slept under it. And when the roof leaked, he called me to fix it." I looked at Andre. "You weren't a partner, son. You were a dependent, a 42-year-old dependent." "Objection," Salinger shouted, standing up. "The defendant is hectoring the witness." "Overruled," the judge said, leaning forward. "The witness will answer. Did you contribute financially to the business, Mr. Collier?" "No," Andre whispered. I sat down. Paige looked furious. She scribbled something on a notepad and shoved it at Salinger. Salinger stood up again. He looked desperate now. He knew the financial angle was dead. He had to go for the emotional jugular. "Your Honor," he said, "while the financial records may be one-sided, we must consider the intent of the lineage. The defendant has disinherited his only biological child. In the state of Georgia, there are protections against vindictive disinheritance, especially when mental capacity is in question. Andre is the sole blood heir. That blood bond carries legal weight regarding the expectation of inheritance." He was playing the blood card. He was saying that because Andre came from my loins, I owed him my life. I closed my eyes. I knew this moment would come. I had prayed it wouldn't. I had prayed I could take this secret to my grave. But looking at Paige's greedy face, looking at the lawyer who was trying to steal Malik's future, I knew I had to do it. I had to break the last bone. I stood up. "Your Honor," I said, my voice quiet. "May I approach the bench?" The judge looked at me. "This is unusual, Mr. Collier. Do you have evidence to submit?" "I do," I said. "I have one document. The only document that matters." I walked forward. I pulled a folded piece of paper from my inside jacket pocket. It was old. The edges were soft like fabric. It was stamped with the seal of the state of Georgia, dated 1982. I handed it to the judge. Judge Blackwell put on his reading glasses. He opened the document. He read it in silence. The room was so quiet you could hear the hum of the vending machine in the hallway. The judge's eyebrows went up. He looked at me with a new expression. It wasn't pity. It was profound respect. "Mr. Salinger," the judge said, "have you seen this?" "No, Your Honor," Salinger said. The judge handed the paper to the bailiff. "Show it to the plaintiff." The bailiff walked over to the table. He placed the paper in front of Andre. Andre looked down. I watched his face. I saw the confusion first, then the shock, then the denial. What is this?" he stammered. "Read it, Andre," I said from the center of the room. "Read it out loud so your lawyer can hear." Andre picked up the paper. His hands were shaking so violently the paper rattled. "Certificate of adoption," he read. He stopped. He couldn't breathe. "Keep reading," I said. "Subject Andre Marcus Washington. Petitioners Winston Collier and Rose Collier. Status granted." Andre looked up at me. His eyes were wide, filled with a terror I had never seen before. "I am adopted," he whispered. Paige snatched the paper from his hand. "No, that is a lie. He forged it." It is not a forgery. Paige, I said, it is a court order. I turned to the gallery. I turned to my son. I met your mother when she was 6 months pregnant, I said. Her boyfriend, your biological father. He ran off the day he found out. He didn't want you. He said you were a mistake. He left her in a shelter with nothing. I took a step closer to the railing. I fell in love with Rose. And when you were born, Andre, I fell in love with you. I cut the cord. I gave you my name. I promised Rose I would never tell you. I wanted you to feel safe. I wanted you to feel like you belonged. Tears were streaming down my face now. I spent 40 years working double shifts to buy you cars, to pay for your school, to give you a life your biological father couldn't give you. I did that because I chose you. I looked at Paige. You stood in my house and called me a mongrel. You said I wasn't good enough. You said blood was everything. Well, Paige blood didn't raise him. I did. I looked back at Andre. He was slumped in his chair. He looked like he had been shot in the chest. You are not my blood, Andre, I said softly, but you were my son until you decided that money was more important than the man who saved you. The courtroom was frozen. Salinger slowly closed his briefcase. He knew it was over. The blood right argument had just evaporated. Andre looked at me. The realization was crashing down on him. All the times he had mocked me for being a simple mechanic, all the times he had looked down on me. He realized now that he was the charity case. He realized that the man he despised was the only man who had ever truly wanted him. Dad, Andre choked out. Oh my God. Dad. I turned my back on him. I looked at the judge. Your Honor, I said. I rest my case. Judge Blackwell took off his glasses. He wiped his eyes. He looked at Paige, who was staring blankly at the wall, realizing her gamble had failed, realizing the loan sharks were coming for her. The court finds in favor of the defendant, the judge said, his voice booming. The motion for constructive trust is denied. The restraining order remains in effect. He banged the gavel. And furthermore, the judge added, looking at Salinger, the court orders the plaintiffs to pay all legal costs incurred by the defendant. And Mr. Salinger, if you ever bring a frivolous suit like this into my courtroom again, I will have you disbarred. Case dismissed. I turned and walked toward the exit. Dad, Andre screamed. He tried to run after me, but the bailiff blocked him. Dad, wait. I didn't know. I stopped at the heavy wooden doors. I looked back. Andre was on his knees again, just like in the driveway. But this time he wasn't crying for money. He was crying for his soul. You didn't know because you never looked, I said. I pushed the doors open. I walked out into the hallway. The air was cooler here. I leaned against the wall and took a deep breath. It was done. The final secret was out. I had won. But as I listened to the muffled sobs of the man I had raised coming from behind the closed doors, I realized that victory doesn't feel like happiness. It feels like relief, and it feels like grief. I checked my phone. I had a text from Malik. I am at the airport, Grandpa. Boarding in 20 minutes. I typed back, fly safe, son. The storm is over. I put the phone in my pocket. I straightened my tie. I walked out of the courthouse and into the sunlight. Andre and Paige had a debt to pay now. To the court, to the lawyers, and to the truth. I had a truck to drive. And for the first time in 40 years, I had nothing to hide. They say rats are the first to jump off a sinking ship. But Paige didn't just jump. She set the ship on fire on her way out just to make sure Andre drowned. We walked out of that courtroom and the ink on the judgment wasn't even dry before she made her move. I wasn't there to see it, but the grapevine in Atlanta is short and efficient. I heard it happened in the parking lot of the courthouse. Andre was standing there, still holding the adoption certificate that proved I had chosen him, that proved I had loved him more than biology ever could. He reached out for his wife's hand. He needed comfort. He needed a partner to help him navigate the wreckage of his life. But Paige didn't take his hand. She slapped it away. She looked at him with eyes that were cold enough to freeze hell over. She told him he was a fraud. She told him he was damaged goods. She said she didn't sign up to be the wife of a bastard child with no inheritance. She didn't scream. She didn't cry. She just calculated. She realized Andre was now a liability with a negative net worth. She served him with divorce papers the next morning. She had them ready. She had been planning her exit strategy since the day I pretended to have a stroke. She left him with nothing. No car, no money. She even took the luggage. She hopped on a plane to Miami 3 days later. Rumor has it she found a new target, a cryptocurrency investor who promised her the moon. She thought she had upgraded. She thought she was back in the high life. But karma has a sense of humor. The investor turned out to be a con artist. He drained her bank account, stole her identity, and left her stranded in a hotel room with a maxed-out credit card. Last I heard, Paige was working the front desk at a budget motel in Tampa, trying to pay off a $50,000 tax lien. The woman who wouldn't shower with a garden hose was now cleaning up after tourists. But I didn't care about Paige. Paige was a predator, and predators eventually get eaten by bigger beasts. I cared about Andre, or at least the ghost of him. Andre didn't go to Florida. He stayed in Atlanta. Maybe he stayed because he had no money to leave. Or maybe he stayed because deep down he couldn't leave the orbit of the only father he had ever known. He hit rock bottom hard. With an eviction on his record and a reputation for embezzlement, no marketing firm would touch him. The man with the MBA, the man who used to sneer at manual labor, found himself standing in the one place he swore he would never be. A car wash. Not a fancy detailing shop. A roadside hand wash on the south side of the city. The kind of place where you work for tips and the chemicals burn your skin. I drove past there once about 3 months after the trial. I wasn't stalking him. I was just driving. I saw him. He was wearing a neon yellow vest over a stained t-shirt. He was holding a soapy sponge scrubbing the rims of a Toyota Camry. It was winter. The water was freezing. I could see his breath in the air. I saw his hands. Those soft manicured hands that used to hold wine glasses were now red-chapped and cracked. He looked thin. His face was gaunt, the cheekbones sharp under a layer of gray stubble. He looked up as my truck passed. For a second, our eyes met. He didn't wave. He didn't look angry. He looked ashamed. He quickly looked down and started scrubbing the tire harder, trying to scrub away his own existence. I didn't stop. I kept driving. But the image stayed with me. I found out later he was living in a basement studio apartment near the airport. It was a single room with a hot plate and a mattress on the floor. The cockroaches were his roommates. At night, he could hear the jets taking off, carrying people to places he would never go again. He wrote me letters. I never opened them. I put them in a box in the closet. I couldn't read them. I knew what they said. I am sorry. I didn't know. Please forgive me. But forgiveness is tricky. You can forgive a mistake. You can forgive an accident. Yeah. But can you forgive a systematic dismantling of your life? Can you forgive a man who looked at your love and saw a bank account? 6 months passed. It was a Saturday. Malik was home for a weekend visit before finals. He looked like a man now. He was wearing a Stanford sweatshirt and he walked with a confidence that filled the room. We were at the shop. We were working on a new project, a 1967 GTO. We were under the hood laughing. I was teaching him how to time the engine. He made a joke about my old music. I made a joke about his new haircut. It was a perfect moment, the kind of moment a father lives for. Then Judge my Rottweiler started barking. Not an aggressive bark, but an alert. I wiped my hands on a rag and walked out of the bay. Malik followed me. There was a man standing on the other side of the chain-link fence. He was standing in the shadows of the old oak tree. He wasn't trying to come in. He was just watching. It was Andre. He looked better than he did at the car wash, but not much. He was wearing clean clothes, but they were cheap thrift store clothes. He had a backpack over his shoulder. He looked like a traveler who had lost his map. He saw us. He saw Malik in his Stanford gear. He saw me in my coveralls. He saw the laughter on our faces that had died the moment we spotted him. He didn't say anything. He didn't ask for money. He didn't ask to come in. He just stood there gripping the wire fence with his fingers. I saw tears rolling down his face. He was looking at what he had lost. And for the first time, he realized that the loss wasn't the $10 million. It wasn't the mansion. It wasn't the boat. He was looking at the love between a grandfather and a grandson. He was looking at the respect. He was looking at the legacy he had thrown away for a leased BMW and a woman who hated him. He realized that he was the orphan now, not because of biology, but because of his choices. He had a father who chose him, and he had rejected that choice. Malik took a step forward. "Dad," he whispered. I put a hand on Malik's chest. I didn't push him back, but I stopped him. "Let him be son," I said quietly. Andre looked at Malik. He raised his hand slowly and gave a small, sad wave. It was a wave of goodbye, a wave of apology. Then he looked at me. His eyes were pleading. They were begging for a nod, a smile, anything that said, "It is okay, come home." My heart hammered in my chest. Every instinct of a father screamed at me to open the gate, to bring him in, to feed him, to fix him. That is what I had done for 40 years. I fixed things. But I remembered the drill. I remembered the safe. I remembered the way he stood silent while his wife spat on my name. I remembered that some things cannot be fixed. Some parts are too broken to be salvaged. If you try to use them, they just break the whole machine again. I looked at my son. I looked at the man I had adopted, the man I had loved. And I made my choice. I didn't nod. I didn't smile. I slowly, deliberately turned my back on him. I faced the shop. I faced the work. I faced the future. Grandpa Malik whispered, "He is crying." I know I said my voice thick with grief. But tears don't wash away ink, Malik. And they don't wash away betrayal. I heard footsteps crunching on the gravel, slow, heavy footsteps walking away. I didn't look back. I couldn't look back. If I looked back, I might crumble. And I needed to be stone. I needed to be the foundation for the boy standing next to me. We stood there in silence until the footsteps faded away. I picked up a wrench. It felt heavy in my hand. "Come on, son," I said. "Let's get this engine running." Malik looked at the empty road where his father had vanished. Then he looked at me. He understood. He understood that love has boundaries. He understood that dignity has a price. He nodded. "Okay, Grandpa." We went back to work. But that night as I lay in bed, I stared at the ceiling for a long time. I didn't cry. I had no tears left. I just listened to the silence of the house. It was a peaceful silence. But it was cold. I had won the war. I had saved my estate. I had saved my grandson. But as I closed my eyes, I saw Andre standing at that fence, holding onto the wire like a prisoner looking at freedom. I saved everything, except him. And I would have to live with that every day for the rest of my life. Time is a mechanic that never stops working. It sands down your edges. It tightens your joints until they creak. And it paints your hair with the color of ash. 4 years had passed since I walked out of that courtroom. 4 years since I signed the deal with Blackwood. 4 years since I sent my grandson to California with a promise and a one-way ticket. I sat in the front row of the Stanford Stadium. The California sun was different from the Georgia sun. It was brighter, sharper, and it didn't carry the weight of humidity. It felt like gold dust settling on my shoulders. I was wearing the suit. The navy blue Italian wool suit with the silk lining. The same suit I had bought with Malik's tuition money despite his father. Back then, this suit was armor. It was a weapon of war. But today, it was just a suit. It hung a little looser on me now. I had lost weight. My doctor, Marcus Harrison, told me my heart was tired. He told me to slow down, but I told him a car does not stop running until the gas tank is empty, and I still had a few miles left. I looked around the stadium. It was a sea of black caps and gowns, thousands of young people ready to conquer the world. Parents were cheering, blowing air horns, holding signs. I saw wealthy men in linen suits checking their watches. I saw mothers wiping tears with expensive handkerchiefs. I was the only one there in a suit that was 4 years old, sitting with a cane between my knees. I was alone. There was no Andre, there was no Paige, there was just me, the mechanic. And then the announcer spoke. "Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the valedictorian of the class of 2028, Mr. Malik Andre Collier." My heart hammered against my ribs, a sound like a piston misfiring. I watched him walk to the podium. He was a man now. He was 22 years old. He wore his gown with a quiet dignity. He adjusted the microphone. He looked out at the crowd of thousands. He looked past the trustees. He looked past the professors. He looked right at me. He didn't smile. He nodded. A small, almost imperceptible nod. The same nod I used to give him when he successfully rebuilt a carburetor. Distinguished guests, faculty, and fellow graduates. Malik began. His voice was deep resonant. It carried across the stadium without trembling. "We have spent 4 years studying economics, philosophy, and engineering. We have learned how to build bridges and how to analyze markets. We have learned the theory of how the world works." He paused. "But I learned the truth of how the world works long before I stepped onto this campus. I learned it in a small garage in Atlanta, Georgia. I learned it from a man who has never read a textbook on macroeconomics, but who knows more about value than any banker on Wall Street. I gripped the handle of my cane, my vision blurred slightly. My grandfather, Winston Collier, is sitting in the front row, Malik said, pointing at me. The giant screens on either side of the stage zoomed in on my face. I tried to look stoic, but my chin was trembling. He is a mechanic, Malik continued. He fixes things that are broken. When I was a boy, I thought he just fixed cars. I thought he just replaced spark plugs and changed oil. But I was wrong. He fixes people. He fixes lives. The stadium went silent. 4 years ago, my life fell apart, Malik said. My family collapsed under the weight of lies and debt. I was lost. I was angry. I was ready to give up, but my grandfather didn't let me. He didn't give me a handout. He gave me a wrench. He taught me that you cannot drive a car forward if you are staring in the rearview mirror. He taught me that dignity isn't something you buy, it is something you build. He took a deep breath. Many of us are graduating today with plans to make millions. We want to be disruptors. We want to be influencers. But I challenge you to be something else. Be mechanics. Find what is broken in this world and fix it. Don't just paint over the rust. Sand it down. Do the hard work. Get your hands dirty, because the only legacy that lasts is the one you build with your own sweat. He looked at me again. To the world's greatest mechanic. Thank you for fixing me, Grandpa. This degree belongs to you. The applause started slowly. Then it grew. Then it became a roar. People stood up. The wealthy men in linen suits were clapping. The mothers were cheering. I stood up. My knees popped. I leaned on my cane. I raised my hand in a wave. I felt a tear slide down my cheek into my white beard. I didn't wipe it away. I let it fall. It was a tear of pure, unadulterated victory. After the ceremony, the campus was a chaotic, joyful mess of hugs and photos. I waited by the fountain just like we had planned. Malik found me. He was holding his diploma in one hand and his cap in the other. He ran to me. He didn't care about his pressed gown. He hugged me tight. He smelled of sweat and success. I did it, Grandpa, he whispered into my ear. You did it, son, I said, patting his back. You did good. He pulled away. He looked at me with concern. You look tired, Grandpa. Are you okay? I am fine. I lied. Just the heat, son. Just the California heat. I reached into the pocket of my jacket. I pulled out a small velvet box. Malik's eyes widened. Grandpa, you didn't have to get me anything. The trust fund, the education, it is enough. Open it, I said. He took the box. He opened it slowly, expecting a watch or maybe a ring. Inside lay a set of keys. They were old keys, brass keys. The edges were worn smooth from 50 years of use. They were attached to a leather fob that was stained with oil. Malik stared at them. He knew these keys. He had seen them hanging on my belt loop since he was a toddler. These are the shop keys, he whispered. I nodded. I am retiring, Malik, I said. My hands, they shake too much now. I can't hold the tools like I used to. And a shop needs a master. Malik looked at me confused. But Grandpa, I have the trust fund. I have $15 million waiting for me. I don't need to fix cars. I smiled. I touched his cheek. The money is the fuel, Malik. But the shop is the engine. I looked around at the pristine campus. You have a choice, son. You can take that $15 million and live a life of leisure. You can become your father. Or you can take these keys. You can use that money to expand, to build. Turn Collier Restorations into something bigger. A trade school, a community center, a place where kids like you used to be can come and learn that they have value. I closed his hand over the keys. Don't sell it, Malik. Don't sell the land. Don't sell the history. Build it. Make it a fortress. That is your real inheritance, not the money, the work. Malik gripped the keys. He looked at them like they were diamonds. I will build it, Grandpa, he said, his voice steady. I promise. I will make it the best shop in the world. I know you will, I said. I looked at him. My work was done. The boy was a man. The victim was a victor. The broken chassis had been restored to showroom condition. Suddenly I felt it, a sharp tightness in the center of my chest, like a bolt being torqued down too hard. I gasped. My hand flew to my chest. Grandpa Malik dropped the keys. He grabbed my arm. Grandpa, what is wrong? The pain radiated down my left arm. My vision tunneled for a second, turning the bright California sun into a narrow spotlight. I stumbled. Malik caught me. He was strong. So strong. "Sit down," Malik yelled. "Somebody help. I need a medic." He lowered me onto the stone bench of the fountain. I tried to breathe, but it felt like there was a heavy weight on my lungs, an engine block sitting on my ribs. "Grandpa, stay with me." Malik pleaded, his face pale. "Breathe. Just breathe." I looked at him. He was terrified, but I wasn't. The pain was there, yes, but underneath the pain there was a profound sense of peace. I looked at the sky. It was so blue. I looked at Malik. He was the future. I reached out and took his hand. "It is okay, son," I whispered. My voice was faint. "No, it is not okay," Malik cried. "Help is coming. Just hold on." I squeezed his hand. "The car is finished." "Malik," I said. "What?" "The restoration," I whispered. "It is finished. It is ready to drive." I smiled. I thought about the Mustang. I thought about the shop. I thought about Rose. She was probably waiting for me. She was probably wondering what took me so long. The tightness in my chest grew heavier, but the fear didn't come. I had won. I had beaten them all. I had beaten the greed. I had beaten the shame. I had beaten the odds. And I was leaving behind something that could not be stolen or foreclosed on. I closed my eyes. I heard Malik's voice calling me from far away. I heard the sirens, but they were just background noise. The engine was cooling down. The race was over. And as the darkness closed in around the edges of my mind, I didn't feel death. I felt like I was finally going home. My grandfather, Winston Collier, did not die in that hospital in California. He was too stubborn to die in a place where he couldn't smell the Georgia pines. He held on. He forced his heart to keep beating long enough to get on a plane, long enough to get back to the small house with the tin roof, long enough to sit on his porch one last time and watch the sun go down over the 5 acres he had fought so hard to keep. He passed away on a Tuesday evening in his favorite rocking chair with Judge the Rottweiler resting his head on his knee. He didn't have any pain. He just closed his eyes to listen to the crickets, and he never opened them again. I am Malik Collier, and I thought I knew who my grandfather was. I thought he was a simple mechanic who liked cigars and old Fords. But on the day of his funeral, I realized I didn't know the half of it. We held the service at the local Baptist church because the funeral home was too small. But the church was too small too. They came from everywhere. Thousands of them. The line of cars stretched for 3 miles down the highway. There were people in expensive suits driving Mercedes-Benzes. There were people in work uniforms driving beat-up trucks. There were single mothers holding the hands of their children. There were old men with walking sticks. I stood by the casket shaking hands for 4 hours. One woman told me Winston had fixed her brakes for free when she couldn't afford to get to her nursing job. A man told me Winston had given him a set of tires so he could drive to a job interview which launched his career. A city councilman told me Winston had quietly paid the property taxes for a widow down the street so she wouldn't lose her home. He never told anyone. He never bragged. He just fixed things. He wasn't just fixing cars. He was fixing the world one broken person at a time. I looked out at the sea of faces, and I realized something profound. My parents, Andre and Paige, had spent their whole lives trying to be important. They chased status. They chased fame. And when they left Atlanta, nobody noticed. My grandfather chased nothing but excellence and truth. And the whole city stopped to mourn him. As the crowd began to disperse toward the cemetery, I saw a solitary figure standing under the shade of an old oak tree at the edge of the churchyard. He was wearing a cheap black suit that didn't fit him well. He looked older than his years. His hair was graying and his shoulders were slumped. It was my father. Andre. He didn't come close. He knew he lost that right. He stood in the shadows watching the casket being loaded into the hearse. He was weeping. Not the polite crying of a funeral, but the raw, ugly sobbing of a man who realizes too late what he threw away. I excused myself from the well-wishers. I walked across the grass toward him. When he saw me coming, he straightened up. He wiped his face with a rough paper napkin. He looked like he wanted to run, but his feet were rooted to the spot. "Malik," he whispered, You look good. You look like him." I didn't hug him. The gap between us was too wide for that now, but I didn't hate him either. My grandfather had taught me that hate is a rust that eats the container it is stored in. I reached into the pocket of my jacket. I pulled out a thick cream-colored envelope. "He left this for you," I said. Andre stared at the envelope. His hand trembled as he reached out to take it. For me, he choked out. After everything I did. He wrote it the night before he died, I said. He told me to give it to you when the time was right. Andre opened the envelope. His fingers fumbled with the wax seal. He pulled out a single sheet of shop stationery. It smelled of tobacco and oil. I watched him read it. I saw his knees buckle. He leaned against the tree for support. Dear Andre, if you are reading this, then I am gone. And if you are reading this, it means you came to say goodbye. That counts for something. I spent a lot of years being angry at you, son. I was angry that you didn't love the work. I was angry that you let a woman turn you against your own blood. But anger is a young man's game, and I am an old man now. I want you to know that I forgive you. I forgive you for the lies. I forgive you for the safe. I forgive you for the tent. But forgiveness is not the same thing as trust. I forgive you because it frees my soul, not because it opens my door. I cannot give you my money, Andre, because I know it would destroy you again. I cannot give you the land because you do not know how to love it. What I can give you is the truth. You were never a mistake. Choosing you was the best thing I ever did. The mistake was thinking I could buy your happiness. I hope you find your own way now. I hope you find a life that makes you proud when you look in the mirror, not a life of leased cars and fake friends, but a life of substance. Live, decent son. That is all I ever wanted. Love, Pop. Andre pressed the letter to his chest. He slid down the trunk of the tree until he was sitting in the dirt, sobbing uncontrollably. He forgave me. He gasped. He actually forgave me. I looked down at him. He did, I said. Now the hard part is forgiving yourself. I turned to walk away. Malik, Andre called out. I stopped. I am working at a hardware store now, he said, wiping his eyes. It is small, just stocking shelves. But I am the manager of the inventory team. I earned it. I looked at him. For the first time in years, I saw a flicker of real pride in his eyes. Not the false pride of a new boat, but the quiet pride of a job well done. That is good, Andre, I said. Keep building. I walked back to the hearse. I didn't look back. My father had his own road to walk, and I couldn't carry him anymore. The next few months were a blur of activity. I didn't sell the land. I didn't build condos. I took the keys my grandfather gave me and I opened the heavy metal doors of the shop. But I didn't just fix cars. I used the trust fund money to renovate the back lot. We built classrooms. We bought state-of-the-art diagnostic computers. We hired retired mechanics who had knowledge they were dying to share. We renamed it, the Winston Collier Technical Institute. The sign out front didn't promise riches. It promised a trade. We recruited kids from the roughest neighborhoods in Atlanta, kids who had been told they were worthless, kids who had been kicked out of school, kids who reminded me of my father before he lost his way. I remember the first day of class, 20 young men and women standing in the shop looking at the tools with wide eyes. I stood on the same stool my grandfather used to sit on. I am not going to teach you how to be rich, I told them. I am going to teach you how to be valuable. Because if you are valuable, you will never be hungry. We taught them how to rebuild engines. We taught them how to weld. But we also taught them how to look a man in the eye and shake his hand. We taught them that your word is your bond. One afternoon, about a year later, I was closing up the shop. The sun was setting, turning the Georgia sky a brilliant purple. I walked out to the parking lot. Parked there was my grandfather's old truck. It was a 1995 Ford F-150. The paint was faded. The bumper was dented. It had 300,000 miles on it. I could have bought any car I wanted. I could have bought a Ferrari. I could have bought a new Mustang. But I grabbed the keys to the truck. I climbed inside. The seat still smelled like him, like cigars and hard work. I started the engine. It roared to life, a little rough but strong. I pulled out onto the highway. I rolled the window down and let the wind hit my face. I looked at the passenger seat. It was empty, but it didn't feel empty. I could feel him there. I could see him smiling. I drove past the spot where the old tent used to be. It was a garden now filled with hydrangeas just like Grandma Rose used to grow. I drove past the high-rise condos where my parents used to pretend to be rich. They were just buildings, glass and steel, cold. I drove toward the sunset. I was Malik Collier. I was a mechanic. I was a teacher. And I was the grandson of Winston Collier. The road ahead was long. There would be potholes. There would be breakdowns. But I had the tools to fix them. I tapped the steering wheel. "Let's ride, Grandpa," I whispered. And for a moment, I swear I heard the distinct click of a Zippo lighter and a deep, raspy voice saying, "Keep it between the ditches, son." The legacy wasn't the money, it wasn't the land, it was the drive. We live in a world obsessed with appearances. My son chased the illusion of status and lost the reality of love. He thought dignity came from a designer suit and a gated community. He was wrong. Dignity is found in the grease under your fingernails after a hard day's work. It is found in keeping your word when it costs you everything. It is found in protecting those who cannot protect themselves. You can inherit money, but you cannot inherit respect. Respect must be earned brick by brick, day by day. Never trade your soul for a seat at a table where you are not truly welcome. If this story touched your heart, please hit that like button and share it with someone who needs to hear it. And tell me in the comments, what is the most valuable lesson your grandparents ever taught you? I read every single comment. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss a story. Remember, the best inheritance isn't what's in your pocket, it's what's in your heart. Thanks for watching.